Chapter 1179. It was too cruel. No matter who went up, they followed the same routine: airdrop butcher plus skeleton warrior plus vampire plus soul banshee surrounded and 10 undead archers shot. Even if they could break through the first wave and escape, there would be a second wave of Death Knights leading the charge. There was truly no path to heaven and no door to hell. In fact, the first 3 members of the Destiny team could only last until Bai Xiaowen's second Death Knights charge before their souls were sent to the underworld. Bai Xiaowen was a little regretful. He still had 2 more moves to show. The 4th person to go up was the vice captain of Team Destiny. He had the ability to teleport and survive the first 2 moves. He also used a big move, Ring of Ice Grave, to restrict the attacks of the summon creatures. The mage let out a sigh of relief. After casting a shield on himself, he began to prepare a large-scale spell. However, he saw Bai Xiaowen's 3rd move. The Wrath Claw was covered in a blood-red glow and rushed over happily. The Ring of Ice Grave didn't freeze the Wrath Claw. It couldn't even slow down. The mage wanted to cast a skill, but the Undead Warlock and Bai Xiaowen's crowd control skills weren't just for show. The Wrath Claw's agility wasn't just for show. It didn't even use a skill. It just used a normal attack to kill the mage. The 4th person fell. It took 21 seconds. The last person, the captain of Team Destiny, was an agility-type warrior. In terms of ability to explore the spirit world, he was stronger than his vice-captain, the mage. However, against Bai Xiaowen, his performance wasn't better than his vice-captain. The Wrath Claw still had a big move hidden. When the Wrath Claw's big move and the Undead Warlock's lightning strike successfully hit and knocked him down, the captain of Team Destiny had already accepted his fate. Under the continuous tearing, combined with the Undead Archer's volley and Bai Xiaowen's damage, the captain of Team Destiny only lasted for 25 seconds before he was declared dead. 57 seconds. If one did not include the time spent searching through the map. Bai Xiaowen had spent a total of 57 seconds to finish off the 5 members of Destiny Guild. Including the initial search time, it would only take about 10 minutes. The atmosphere at the scene was silent. The fans of the home team, who were the most energetic, could no longer jump up. A fan of the home team returned to his seat and looked at the big screen. He rubbed his eyes and said, "How can this be? In the time it took me to buy a bottle of water, the second round was over? Is the difference that big?" The audience in the stadium felt like they were in a dream. They felt that it was too absurd. This was the Tian Fated battle team. Huaxia was ranked 3rd and ranked 16th in the world. Such a top-notch battle team had been defeated by one person? And within a minute? America, in a manner of the Rockefeller family. I'm not surprised at all. Camille, who was watching the match through the live broadcast, smiled and shook her head. There are 2 prerequisites. First, in terms of individual strength, Captain Bai Ruo is already standing at the peak of the Awakened level. As for the 5 members of the Destiny Guild, even the strongest of them wouldn't be able to enter the top 10 in the world. In Huaxia's martial arts world, the world's number 1 can beat the world's number 3 in one move, not to mention such a big gap. After a pause, Camille continued, the second prerequisite is Captain Bai's profession. A summoner's ability to fight is the strongest. As long as there is no large-scale loss of summoned creatures, the summoner will always be in their strongest state. Monica Gray agreed, yes, for other professions, the reason they can't defeat 5 people is because of the cooldown time of their skills and the consumption of their mental power. But for Bai Xiaowen, there is basically no such problem. Looking at the close-up of Bai Xiaowen's calm face after defeating 5 people, Camille suddenly sighed with emotion. Captain Bai is becoming more and more charming. Even through the big screen, I can smell the male hormones coming from him. Oh, Monica's face went black as she reached out to grab Camille's indescribable body. That's enough. The 2 American ladies were giggling as they rolled around. The scene was so alluring that any normal man would not be able to hold himself back after seeing it. The onlooker sees the game clearly, but the person involved is confused. Camille could see the reason, but the 5 members of the Destiny Guild found it hard to accept. In their home ground, they were defeated in 57 seconds. Just this time alone was enough to engrave the Destiny Guild on the pillar of shame. After half an hour of commentary review, which was also the time for the host and away team to rest, the captain of the Destiny Guild came up to the stage in a daze. He didn't even dare to look at the audience, but all kinds of abuse still drilled into his ears. The fans of the Destiny Guild have always been the craziest. When they supported the home team, they dared to throw mineral water bottles at the big boss of the Awakened Circle, Bai Xiaowen. But when the home team lost so badly, the speed of their reaction was also very fast. Their disdain and abuse towards the home team was also the craziest. These fans, do they really not have any sense? Qiao Rui said in disbelief. The third and most crucial match is about to begin. Don't they consider the home team's psychological ability to withstand pressure? Bai Xiaowen smiled. Just because the home team won one match, they dared to throw mineral water bottles at me. Do you expect them to have any sense? In the previous matches, the White Phoenix Guild was also playing in an away game. They had never had such crazy fans. The management strategy of the Destiny Guild's fans was very problematic. They didn't know how to guide the fans to rationally support the home team, attracting a large number of brainless fanatics. When the team was in a bad situation, it was inevitable that they would suffer such a negative impact. The order in the stadium was somewhat chaotic. The officials had no choice but to mobilize a large number of security personnel to ask the most noisy fans to leave the stadium, including the fan who had just thrown a mineral water bottle at Bai Xiaowen. The two commentators tried their best to persuade the home fans to not be too agitated. The 5 members of the Destiny Guild were silent, their morale low. The White Phoenix Guild coldly watched this farce from the sidelines. Under the efforts of a large number of security personnel, the order in the stadium was finally controlled. The two commentators also breathed a sigh of relief. In fact, they hadn't encountered such a chaotic situation many times. It wasn't that the Destiny Guild had never lost, but they had never lost so badly. Bai Xiaowen had defeated 5 people in a row in 1 minute. It was tantamount to 5 big slaps in the face. How could the low-quality fans endure it? In any case, the two hurriedly announced the start of the ban for the third match. The ban for the two teams didn't change because the match modes that had already been used would not appear in the following matches. The Destiny Guild also didn't need to ban the Defender mode. The wheel on the big screen swung between the 2 remaining team battle modes, True Massacre and Leader's Challenge for a while, and finally stopped at True Massacre. Chapter 1180. It took the 5 members of the Destiny Battle Squad some time to adjust their mentality. They had always been used to being praised by the fans and the audience. They had never encountered such a situation where the entire audience was booing and cursing. However, they were elites who had gone through dozens of spiritual world explorations. They were also people who had gone through a lot of training. Their ability to adjust themselves was not bad. Drawing True Slaughter mode was like a shot of adrenaline. After all, a team battle was different from a one-on-one battle. Bai Xiaowen's individual strength was very strong. In a one-on-one battle, no one in Team Destiny could last more than 30 seconds. However, if it was 2 against 1, they would definitely cause a lot of trouble for Bai Xiaowen and force him to use all his cards. Bai Xiaowen could only surround and kill 1 person at a time. There would definitely be an opening. This was the difference. If it was 3 against 1 Bai Xiaowen, it was needless to say. Unless Bai Xiaowen performed exceptionally and showed off in front of them, it would be hard for him to escape death. 1 against 5 and 1 against 5 were 2 completely different concepts. Now that they had drawn True Slaughter mode, the key items they had prepared before the match were much more useful. Because there was no way to revive after death, the powerful items could be used to decide the outcome. This was where Team Destiny's confidence came from. True Slaughter mode, Bai Xiaowen's mouth revealed a playful smile. He glanced at the 5 members of Team Destiny and did not leave any harsh words. He turned around and said, "Let's go." Team White Phoenix stepped into the underground training ground in a single file. Barely half an hour later, the courage that the Destiny battle team had mustered up was completely wiped out. In the battle, Team White Phoenix fully utilized the advantage of the Wolf Valley Awakening technique. They dragged out the battle and successfully stacked Xiao Rui's soul rhythm to the maximum, 25% attribute reduction. In terms of attributes, Team Destiny had already lost the qualifications to go head-to-head with Team White Phoenix. Naturally, Team Destiny was not willing to let their efforts go to waste. They decisively used a powerful item, Activated Bone Shield, giving all 5 of them a temporary 50% damage reduction buff. They were going to fight to the death with Team White Phoenix. The captain of Team Destiny, a hero-class agility-based warrior, cast a single-target penetration-type awakening skill, crippling the Butcher. The rest of the team followed up and killed the Butcher. The vice-captain of Team Destiny, a heroic mage, found the perfect opportunity to cast a powerful spell that vaporized all of Bai Xiaowen's skeletal archers and shadow assassins. Even the Terror Paladins and Death Paladins were affected by the shockwaves and dropped to critical health. This awakening spell severely injured Bai Xiaowen's summoned creature. Just as Team Destiny thought that victory was in their grasp and was about to counterattack, Bai Xiaowen raised his hand and fused the 3 remaining Terror Knights. A gigantic Terror Knight returned to the battlefield. Bai Xiaowen used the Whip of Cruelty again, doubling the attack power of the giant Terror Knight and giving it 100% lifesteal. The giant Terror Knight became the new mainstay, blocking at the forefront. Together with Hansu, they resisted Team Destiny's attacks. At this time, Team Destiny's damage output was exhausted. Team White Phoenix became stronger as they fought. Cecilia shot a series of splitting arrows, lowering the enemy's health. Then, she jumped into the battlefield with 2 passively Shui and reaped the lives of the enemies. After killing Team Destiny's vice-captain, the mage, Bai Xiaowen summoned Demon Lady and used the enhanced version of Mana Draw, Grudge to lock onto Team Destiny's captain, making him lose the ability to continue casting awakening skills. In the end, Team Destiny's attributes were greatly weakened and they were all killed by Team White Phoenix. In true slaughter mode, Team White Phoenix won. With a score of 2-1, the White Phoenix battle team defeated the Destiny battle team, who was ranked 3rd in the Huaxia League and ranked 16th in the world. In the Huaxia region where the strong were as numerous as the clouds, the White Phoenix battle team took the last ticket to the Super Cup. The competition is over. Let us congratulate Team White Phoenix for winning the last spot in the Super Cup. They will compete in the Super Cup together with Team Thor and Team Razor in January next year. The 2 commentators were not in a good mood because of the home team's defeat. However, their professionalism was not bad. They forced themselves to give their blessings to Team White Phoenix. Let us congratulate Team White Phoenix in advance for achieving excellent results in the Super Cup and showing off the prestige of Huaxia. Sparse applause could be heard in the stadium. The applause was not enthusiastic. Clearly, many fans of Team Destiny were still unable to get over the emotions of defeat. However, Team White Phoenix managed to change the attitude of a portion of the superficial fans with their brilliant performance in the last 2 matches. As for the audience who were originally neutral, it was needless to say. On the battlefield, the strong should win respect. During the live interview, Bai Xiaowen was asked about the mineral water bottle incident. As for whether he was angry or not, Bai Xiaowen definitely felt uncomfortable in his heart. However, as a big shot, Bai Xiaowen had to take care of his image. He was also very clear about how to answer to get the approval of the majority. Bai Xiaowen said simply, "I'm very sorry about the mineral water bottle incident. However, this will not affect our joy of winning. I hope that the next time we come to this city, we will be able to see greater improvement in the quality of the audience." Team White Phoenix declined the follow-up interviews and returned directly to the COMC. Accepting interviews could gain more popularity, but it did not mean much to Team White Phoenix at this time. At present, Team White Phoenix's 5 members had already stabilized at level A popularity and 4 level B popularity. It would be very difficult to go further. For example, Bai Xiaowen's current Earth popularity was 4,587 points. It exceeded the threshold of level A by more than 1,500 points. It seemed very high. However, to reach level S popularity, it required a threshold of 10,000 points of popularity. This was not just the level of Huaxia's popularity. It had to be known by everyone in the world. Moreover, it had to be on the big news and be popular for a period of time. There were not many awakened people in the world who could achieve level S popularity, let alone maintain it for more than 3 months. Most of the main forces of strong Super Cup teams only had level A popularity. They could break through the threshold of level S in a short period of time, but to maintain it for 3 months was basically impossible. Long-term maintenance and a short-term breakthrough were two different concepts. A super team's popularity could break through level S for a short period of time. It would be enough if they won the Super Cup. However, to maintain their popularity for 3 months without falling, it would require the cooperation of the media from all over the world. This was simply impossible. The Super Cup was a major event that was hyped up by the joint efforts of all countries. However, after the finals, not many media outlets were willing to report on it in less than a month. Without the support of the global media, a team's popularity would inevitably fall by relying on the influence of one country. After returning to the COMC, Bai Xiaowen led the team to conduct a post-battle summary and completely nipped the mentality of underestimating the enemy in the bud. At this point, the Super Cup bubble competition was over. Next was the roulette lottery. Chapter 1181. The White Phoenix team had been looking forward to this round of roulette for a long time. Since the CADL semifinals, they had experienced major events such as winning the CADL championship, appearing on the Central News, advancing into the Great Southwest, qualifying for the Super Cup bubble competition, and so on. The White Phoenix team's popularity had been maintained at a relatively high level. It had been 3 months since then. On the night of their return to the COMC, the 5 members of the White Phoenix team gathered at Bai Xiaowen's house and took turns to start the roulette. It was a pity that Xiaojun had yet to return from her exploration in the spiritual realm. Otherwise, it would have been more lively and Xiaojun would have been able to broaden her horizons. Bai Xiaowen and the others were already very familiar with this kind of popularity lottery. It was different from the roulette of the league championship reward and was divided into 4 areas of different sizes. Obviously, the larger the area, the higher the probability. Currently, there was a 40% probability of psionic points, a 30% probability of tickets, a 20% probability of equipment, and a 10% unknown reward. Li Shi volunteered and was the first to draw. She directly called out the virtual roulette. The Spiritual Realms Rules prompt message detected that in the past 3 months, your lowest world popularity level is B, and the highest world popularity level is B. Final rating, B. You have obtained a chance to draw a ticket to the spiritual realm, silver roulette. The silver roulette appeared, and in the middle was a silver pointer inlaid with gold. Li Shi took a deep breath and moved the pointer. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the pointer spun, and after a while, it slowly came to a stop and finally stopped at 40% psionic points reward area. The Spiritual Realms Rules prompt message, you have obtained psionic points as a reward. The reward is being drawn, you have obtained 22,186 psionic points. Ah, Baba. Li Shi's face was full of bad luck. The publicly recognized little lucky hand of the team had suffered a setback in the first battle. Cecilia was the second to try. In the end, Cecilia's luck was a little too good. She drew 20% of the equipment reward area and randomly obtained a gold equipment. Generally speaking, the additional attributes of the randomly drawn equipment were determined by the main attributes of the person who drew it. In the end, Cecilia drew a gold shoulder pad. Its attributes were agility +4, physique +2, and it had no additional skills. It was very mediocre. Although the equipment requirement was only basic agility 15 and the requirements were very low, what was the point of this mediocre gold equipment for the White Phoenix team? Do the laws of the spiritual realm have some misunderstanding about luck? Cecilia, who was never good at complaining, couldn't help but say, the ticket reward area has a 30% chance, and the equipment only has a 20% chance. But I want the ticket, not the equipment. It can't be helped. The valuation of the spiritual realm's loss has always been criticized. I think its valuation is probably based on the strength of the item's psionic particles. It has never considered the rarity of the item, its popularity in the awakened market, and other factors, Bai Xiaowen said. There was no other way. Han Su continued to draw. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Han Su was a little nervous. He called out the silver wheel and moved the needle with his thick fingers. Han Su didn't use much force, and the needle only spun a few times before it slowed down. Oh no, another spiritual power point. Li Shi's face fell. However, although the golden-laid needle was slow, it was still moving with great effort. Before the spinning force was exhausted, it finally crawled out of the 40% white psionic energy points reward area. Then, it stopped in the 10% black psionic energy points reward area. It dropped? Li Shi's eyes widened. It dropped. Bai Xiaowen laughed. Han Su hadn't reacted yet. He had been sharing the notifications of the spiritual realm's loss. You have received an unknown reward. The reward is being randomly selected. You have received a ticket to the spiritual realm. The wheel's light disappeared, and a slightly quaint bronze item floated in the air and finally fell into Han Su's palm. This is. Han Su handed it to Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen received a notification. You have received a special item, bronze wine bottle. Bronze wine bottle teleports the user to the spiritual realm. Disappears after use. Remaining usage period, 15 days. Based on the item's grade, you have received an additional 3 chances to draw, 3 out of 6. The contents of the draw are as follows. Bai Xiaowen held the bronze wine bottle and patted Han Su's shoulder. Old Han, well done. This is an A-grade ticket? Li Shi said a little uncertainly. That's right. It's an out-and-out A-grade ticket. Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, it's a B-grade silver wheel. If you directly draw a 30% ticket area, it'll be a B-grade ticket. If you draw a 10% random reward, the value of the prize will be raised to a whole new level. The random B-grade ticket will be upgraded to an A-grade ticket. There was no need for the psionic camera to detect the strength of the psionic particles. The notification of 3 additional chances to draw given by the spiritual realm's loss was enough to explain everything. Qiao Rui was also full of smiles. This bronze wine bottle is obviously an artifact from the ancient Huaxia. The final match must be the ancient Huaxia plane. That's awesome. Old Han, you're awesome. Li Shi gave him a thumbs up. Han Su touched his butt in embarrassment. His movements were very subtle. He had just come back to his senses. He had actually drawn the most important ticket that the team had been looking forward to, and it was an A-grade ticket. Next, Qiao Rui did not have to worry so much about drawing the ticket and directly started drawing. In the end, she also drew a 20% equipment reward and randomly received a gold equipment. It was a piece of leg equipment, silk pants. They were moon white and soft to the touch. The texture was very good. Exquisite silk pants, binds after pickup, equipment grade, hero, gold, equipment requirement, 40 spirit, equipment position, legs, attribute, spirit +6, additional skill 1, comfort, passive. The recovery speed of the wearer's health, physical strength, and spirit is increased by 10%. Additional skill 2, silk, passive. The movement speed of the wearer is increased by 5%. Durability, 45-45, description, natural silk, handmade. Exquisite silk pants, worth keeping for a lifetime. There are actually 2 additional skills. Li Shi was very shocked at first glance, but after taking a closer look, he pursed his lips. These 2 skills, TSK, it's okay. Passive skills are always active, so it's normal that the effect is weaker. Bai Xiaowen took a closer look. It's a very good passive skill. It's quite good for Sister Qiao. Qiao Rui also smiled. The silk pants actually increased the recovery speed of the wearer's spirit and movement speed. Usually, these two attributes would appear on the helmet and boots respectively. For example, the helmet that Qiao Rui was wearing now had an attribute that increased the recovery speed of the wearer's spirit by 20%, while the slippery boots had an attribute that increased the wearer's movement speed by 15%. If Qiao Rui wore the silk pants, she would have a 30% recovery speed of the wearer's spirit and a 20% permanent movement speed bonus. It was very suitable for her. As for the basic requirement of 40 spirit, Qiao Rui completely met it. After Qiao Rui put away the equipment, everyone's eyes fell on Bai Xiaowen. Eye of Evolution, Eye of Evolution. Chapter 1182. Come on, Captain Bai, let's broaden our horizons with the gold-level popularity roulette, Li Shi teased. Bai Xiaowen smiled and grabbed her ponytail, then called out the popularity roulette. The golden roulette of A-level popularity roulette. If she drew equipment, she could choose the option of custom-made gold equipment. There was a high probability of custom-making a top-grade gold equipment. It was much more reliable than Cecilia and Qiao Rui's random gold equipment. It was definitely a blessing for the unlucky. Bai Xiaowen hoped that she could draw 20% of the equipment option, because it would not be of much use if she drew the ticket again. Unless she drew 10% of the special area and obtained a ticket at random, it would be upgraded to an S-level ticket. But Bai Xiaowen knew that the probability of such a situation was small. Han Su had already used his luck once, and it was too unlikely for him to use it again. Unexpectedly, the needle of the golden popularity roulette finally stopped at the 30% ticket reward area. In other words, Bai Xiaowen also drew a ticket, and it was also an A-level ticket. The silver popularity roulette required 10% of the unknown area to be upgraded to an A-level ticket. For the golden popularity roulette, the ticket drawn normally was an A-level ticket. In his hand was a slender rapier, with some mottled rust on it. Bai Xiaowen received a notification, "You have received a special item, Aristocratic Ceremonial Sword." Aristocratic Ceremonial Sword teleports the user to the spiritual realm, disappears after use. Remaining usage period, 15 days. The 5 members of the White Phoenix team looked at each other. If Han Su did not use his luck to draw an A-level ticket, everyone would be very happy if Bai Xiaowen, who was the last to draw, drew a ticket. But with Han Su's ticket, this ticket seemed a little redundant. Because of the ticket's usage period, the White Phoenix team could only use one ticket at a time. Comparing the two A-level tickets, Han Su's bronze wine bottle ticket should be compatible with the ancient Huaxia dimension. Then, this aristocratic ceremonial sword ticket, which was suspected to be compatible with the ancient European dimension, could only be abandoned. "It's a pity that we have to sell this ticket," said Li Shui. "It's not worth it to sell it," Bai Xiaowen sighed. The value of the A-class ticket was very high. The first main mission had a minimum time limit of 15 days, and the tickets below B-class only had a time limit of 10 days. In other words, the A-class ticket had a durability suffix. If you were to draw the durability suffix from the A-grade ticket, the duration of the main mission would be extended by 75%. In other words, it was directly extended to 26 days and 6 hours. There was no need to trigger additional main storyline missions. Just by relying on the first main storyline mission, he could obtain close to a month's worth of time to explore the spirit world. It could be said that this was extremely terrifying. You could draw 3 times with the A-grade ticket, 3 out of 6. The chance of drawing a durable prefix was as high as 50%, which was also very impressive. Despite the high value of A-class tickets, it was still difficult to sell them at a satisfactory price in the market. It was hard to find a suitable buyer. There was also the time limit of the A-grade ticket. It only had a 15-day shelf life, which was too short for a high-value item. The buyer could wait and see, but it was very difficult for the seller to remain calm. Qiao Rui suddenly said, "Captain, you should be very close to the principal of Jinghai University, right?" Bai Xiaowen hesitated for a moment. "Not very close, but I've met him once. Principal Yan is a very good person." Qiao Rui said, "I suggest that you talk to Principal Yan and apply for a high-grade treasure chest in the trial space to store the tickets to the spirit world. Well, I have to pay a fine for revealing this information. Captain, please help me pay it. After saying this, Qiao Rui shared his information interface. The rules of the spirit world prompted him, "You have revealed confidential information. The confidentiality level is 0. Depending on the severity of the matter, you will be fined 16,000 points of spiritual energy. Do you agree to pay?" Bai Xiaowen transferred 16,000 points of spiritual energy to Qiao Rui without blinking. "Now, can you tell me more about it?" "It's about the treasure chest in the trial space," Bai Xiaowen asked. In his heart, these secrets were completely worth spending spiritual energy points to understand. It would help him understand the rules of the spirit world and the underlying rules behind it. Qiao Rui nodded slightly. "No problem. The trial space is actually a spatial fragment between a treasure land and a spiritual energy training ground. It's also a product of the reconstruction of the spirit world's plane. We already know that the treasure land is a large fragment, and the spiritual energy training ground is a small fragment. The trial space is a medium fragment. The origin fragment of the trial space can be transformed into a spiritual energy training ground, but its space capacity is larger than a super-large spiritual energy training ground. It's not suitable to be transformed into a spiritual energy training ground. Otherwise, the maintenance cost will be much higher, and the effect won't be much better than a super-large spiritual energy training ground. The items in the trial space that contain the spatial law fragments will be transformed into treasure chests according to the wishes of the activator. They can be used to store spiritual energy items, be it equipment, props, or tickets to the spirit world." At this point, Qiao Rui knocked on the blackboard, which didn't exist, and emphasized. "Here's the main point. The items in the treasure chest in the trial space are in a stagnant state. They won't change with the passage of time unless the trial space is destroyed. Then, the tickets to the spirit world placed inside will always remain the same as when they were placed." Li Shi came to a realization. No wonder the treasure chest at the end of the trial space is like this. I was wondering how I could take out tickets that hadn't expired. Qiao Rui smiled and said, "Those tickets were bought by the school at a low price. The principal used his authority to specially place them in. As for the additional rewards, equipment, props, and so on, they are automatically generated by the remnant rules of the trial space. They are usually related to the strength of the space's spiritual energy particles." Bai Xiaowen understood. "Sister Qiao, what you mean is that I'll go to Principal Yan and ask him to help me store the Class A ticket that I don't need for the time being. I can take it out when I need it." Qiao Rui smiled and nodded. "Then," he said, "but there's one thing to take note of. Each trial space's treasure chest can only store one ticket. The trial space required for the Class A ticket must be an advanced space. If Principal Yan's treasure chest is full, there won't be any way to store it." Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "I know that. There will definitely be one." Bai Xiaowen had the idea of challenging the school's trial space in the past. He wanted to challenge the most difficult advanced space and win a high-grade ticket. However, after asking around, he learned that the advanced space was temporarily not open. This was one of the reasons why Bai Xiaowen was willing to graduate early. What did it mean that it was temporarily not open? According to Bai Xiaowen's understanding, there were only two possibilities. The first possibility was that the school didn't receive the Class A ticket, so there was no way to prepare a corresponding reward for the advanced trial space. Naturally, it was not open. The second possibility was that the school was worried about losing resources and forbade students from challenging the advanced trial space. Based on Bai Xiaowen's understanding of Principal Yan Buiyuan, the second possibility was extremely small. Jinghai University wouldn't do that. There was basically no one who had the ability to challenge the advanced trial space and pass it at the university level, except for a monster like Bai Xiaowen. If such a monster really appeared, the school would be overjoyed. They would even offer all kinds of preferential treatment. Why would they be selfish and not give the students a chance to become stronger? Therefore, it must be the first possibility. Jinghai University's advanced trial space treasure chest didn't store Class A tickets. Chapter 1183. What happened next was simple. Bai Xiaowen personally made a trip to Jinghai University to talk to Principal Yan alone. Both of them knew about the secret information of the trial space, so there was no problem in communicating. Principal Yan readily agreed to Bai Xiaowen's request and kept this aristocratic ceremonial sword Class A ticket for him. He also asked about Xiaojun while he was at it. Bai Xiaowen could feel that Principal Yan valued Xiaojun more than Bai Xiaowen himself, Sai, who asked Bai Xiaowen to graduate early. Now, Principal Yan could only hope that Xiaojun would grow up as soon as possible and lead the Jinghai University team to regain its glory. After that, Bai Xiaowen and his teammates drew the 3 suffixes for bronze wine goblet. The final suffixes were prestigious, prominent, and challenge. The durability suffix that Bai Xiaowen especially hoped to draw did not appear. However, the 2 prestigious and prominent suffixes were also very good suffixes. They could provide a good starting identity for the White Phoenix team. Especially since the ancient Huaxia was more focused on family background. The options for the Class A ticket were the same as the Class B ticket, but the bonuses for each option were higher. The prestigious suffix increased one's background by 3 levels, including but not limited to nobility, caste, and bloodline. The prominent suffix increased one's status by 3 levels, including but not limited to official positions and positions of power. The challenge suffix would generate an additional hero challenge mission after entering the spiritual realm. Now, the full name of this bronze wine goblet became Bronze Wine Goblet of Prestigious and Prominent. Overall, Bai Xiaowen was quite satisfied. Although he did not draw the most important durability suffix, the Class A ticket itself had a base duration of 15 days, which could make up for it to a certain extent. Next, it was time to prepare the information. Bai Xiaowen crammed all kinds of information about the ancient Huaxia dimension. This time, there were no experts to help him answer his questions in the spiritual realm. 2 days later, Xiaojun finally returned from the spiritual realm. At this time, she had risen to level 2. Xiaojun had gone to an ancient European plane that seemed to have just been reconstructed. The strongest boss she had encountered was level 3, which was 2 levels higher than her. During this exploration, Xiaojun had killed 1 boss, 7 elite monsters, and a large number of normal template monsters. In addition to completing the main mission, she had also completed an A-rank side mission. It could be said that she had returned from a rewarding journey. The reason why Xiaojun was able to trigger so many side quests was all thanks to her exclusive equipment, the Dragon Jade Disc. The charm that was passively bestowed upon Xiaojun made it easier for her to gain the goodwill of the people in the spirit world. Once the goodwill increased, the side quests would naturally come to her. What was worth mentioning was that Xiaojun had discovered the growth method of her exclusive equipment: kill people with powerful official backgrounds. From the looks of it, the Dragon Vein Jade Wall would increase in length as long as one killed an official with a noble title. For example, killing a Baron of the Empire would increase his growth by 1 point. If the Baron also held an important position in the Empire, he would also receive additional growth. As for the A-rank side mission, he had to assassinate an Imperial Count. After Xiaojun completed the quest, she received 10 growth points. During this trip, Xiaojun had received a total of 14 growth points. However, the Dragon Vein Jade Disc did not level up. It was still in its initial Dragon Binding Jade Lock form, and its growth rate was 14 to 100. Is it best for Xiaojun to join a faction like the Rebel Army in the future? Li Shi was a little excited for some reason. In the future exploration of the spirit world, Xiaojun can be the king of all kinds of places. Everything is for the growth of your exclusive equipment. Xiaojun was a little depressed as she muttered, "This way, the choice of factions will be much smaller." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "I don't think so." Under everyone's gaze, Bai Xiaowen said, "The Dragon Vein Jade Disc can be transformed into exclusive equipment by absorbing dragon energy." What is dragon energy? From what I understand, it is the providence of a plane world. Every plane world has 2 or more factions, and these factions obviously have their own providence. A faction without providence is like a child that God dislikes the most. It will definitely be eliminated early in the faction war. Then, specifically, the leaders of a faction should bear more or less the providence of their faction. The higher the position, the greater the proportion of providence they bear. The growth of the Dragon Vein Jade Disc should rely on killing important figures in the spirit world and plundering their providence to strengthen itself. Then, it doesn't matter if the person killed is from an official background, Bai Xiaowen concluded. For example, if Xiao Jun enters the air and plane world, she can plunder a lot of providence by killing the emperor. However, if she kills the leader of the Northern Rebel Army, Yusak, she should also be able to obtain a lot of providence. Then, the Dragon Vein Jade Disc will gain a lot of growth points. When everyone heard this talk about providence, they felt that it made sense but lacked basis. However, Xiao Jun still had a long way to go. She could use 1 or 2 plane worlds to test Bai Xiaowen's theory of providence. If killing the leader of the rebel army, as opposed to the official regime, also gave her growth points, she would not have to worry about the problem of choosing a faction. "Brother, are you going to the spirit world too?" Xiao Jun asked. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "Yes, we deliberately waited for a few days. In addition to looking up information, we also wanted to meet you. This time, we're using A-class tickets to go to an ancient Huaxia plane. It should take a long time, maybe a month, or even longer." "Oh." Xiao Jun lowered her head sensibly. Then, she raised her little face and smiled. "Brother, you can do it." Qiao Rui was very sensitive to see that the moment Xiao Jun lowered her head, a flash of disappointment flashed in her eyes. However, there was nothing she could do. She could only sigh softly. A trace of disappointment appeared in her eyes, but it quickly disappeared. Bai Xiaowen continued to make arrangements for his will. "Next, we have to finish dealing with the affairs of Earth. Cecilia, go to the Kane territory and comprehensively check the development of the Kane territory. Check out the hidden dangers. I'll transfer a large number of materials from the territory to supply the virtual shop's sales needs for the next period of time. We can raise the price appropriately to prevent the goods from being sold out prematurely. As for the Awakened Association, I also have to make a trip to ensure that the guild is treated as an A-class guild as soon as possible. Recently, the guild's strength has increased greatly with the addition of many elite Awakened. In addition, the guild leader's strength has increased greatly after collecting the Forbidden Army set. B-class guild missions are definitely not a problem. If there are A-class guild missions, we can put them aside for the time being. We'll talk about it when we return." In the next few days, Bai Xiaowen settled all the affairs of Earth. Then, he led the White Phoenix squad and stepped into the spirit world again. Chapter 1184. Matching the Plane World. Matching successful. Character data has been scanned. Queuing, please wait. Entering the plane world, the rolling waters of the Yangtze River flow east, washing away all heroes. It's been 400 years since the great ancestors' snake-slaying uprising. Omitted, in the silent void before entering the plane. Hearing the familiar loud voice, Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi looked at each other, and each showed a trace of nostalgia. The plane world of the Three Kingdoms. They did not expect that the Bloodstained War flag as a locator item would actually pull the White Phoenix team into the plane world of the Three Kingdoms. The plane of the Three Kingdoms was Li Shi's transfer plane. It was also the first time the two of them had teamed up to explore the plane of the spirit realm. Naturally, it had a special meaning. The plane world of the Three Kingdoms? It should be the most difficult level in the ancient Huaxia plane, said Qiao Rui. Cecilia was a little puzzled. Why? Because the plane world of the Three Kingdoms was the most popular in the later generations of Earth. Bai Xiaowen took over the topic. The romance of the Three Kingdoms had pushed the popularity of the plane world of the Three Kingdoms to the peak. Other than that, there was no other chaotic era that was so widely known. Li Shi pulled Cecilia and whispered to her about the status of the Three Kingdoms era in the ancient Huaxia. Qiao Rui was more concerned about the identity of the team leader, Bai Xiaowen. The spirit realm's precepts sent a notification, detected that the awakened Bai Xiaowen has entered the plane world of the three kingdoms for the second time. You can choose a new noble or prominent identity to enter, free citizen plus 3 levels of background and 3 levels of status. If you do so, the reputation and popularity you have accumulated in the plane world of the three kingdoms will be reset to 0. You can also continue to use the identity of Baiwen and continue to explore the plane world of the three kingdoms. Warning: if you continue to use the identity of Baiwen, the area you enter will be affected, and the main mission will also be changed. With the experience of entering the Black Tide plane for the second time, Bai Xiaowen was much more relaxed this time. Indicates the popularity, faction, and social connections of Baiwen's identity in the plane world of the three kingdoms. Spiritual Realms Rules Prompt: your current popularity in the three kingdoms is 88 points, grade E. Your reputation in the Yellow Turban Army camp is cold. Your reputation in Liu Bei's faction is friendly. Liu Bei's army camp leader: Liu Bei's favorability towards you is familiar. Liu Bei's army general Guan Yu's favorability towards you is friend. Liu Bei's deputy general Zhao Yun's favorability towards you is familiar. Following that, there were a series of favorable impressions from Liu Bei's generals. Bai Xiaowen ignored them all. He thought for a while and called out, "Shui. Check your previous identity and your reputation in Liu Bei's army. The most important thing is your favorability with Zhao Yun." Li Shui, who was chatting with Cecilia, raised his head and nodded. After checking, Li Shui said, "My reputation is friendly, and my favorability is mostly neutral. Wait a minute, Zhao Yun's favorability towards me is actually friend." Whoosh. 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 The other three, including Han Su, looked at Bai Xiaowen. Qiao Rui said slowly, "According to the usual rules, when people of the opposite sex in the spiritual realm have a favorable impression of an awakened who is friend or above, they will usually activate affection. TSK. There's something fishy about this." Seeing that his teammates were looking at his head as if he was wearing a red hat, Bai Xiaowen quickly clarified. Hey, don't misunderstand. Zhao Yun thinks that Shui is similar to his sister, so he has such a high favorability towards her. Don't link everything to the relationship between a man and a woman. Zhao Yun isn't that kind of person." All right. After a burst of filthy laughter, Qiao Rui returned to the topic at hand. "It's a pity to give up on this relationship. If we can make Zhao Yun work for us, even if we can't do whatever we want in the three kingdoms, we can at least do whatever we want. For this reason, if you continue to use Baiwen's identity and give up your existing famous family and prominent affix, the spiritual realm's rules should let you draw 2 more times. The probability of drawing a durable affix is 66.7%, so it's not a loss. If they wanted to activate Li Shui's identity, they had to activate Bai Xiaowen's identity." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "No, it's impossible to make Zhao Yun work for us just based on their relationship, which isn't even close to that of a brother and a sister. Zhao Yun is someone who puts his country before his family. His loyalty to his master, Liu Bei, is greater than anything else." After pausing for a moment, Bai Xiaowen continued, "The reason why I checked the reputation of my and Shui's previous identities was mainly to determine how long it has been since we last left the Three Kingdoms plane. After all, 2 years have passed on Earth. Now it seems that the decline in reputation is not that great. Not many years have passed in the Three Kingdoms plane, at most 3 to 5 years. Maybe the people in the Three Kingdoms are nostalgic?" Li Shui joked. "Very likely." Unexpectedly, Bai Xiaowen agreed. Then he said, "But I still don't plan to use Baiwen's identity anymore. The biggest advantage of this identity is the foundation I laid in Liu Bei's army. If I continue to cut in, I'll just be working for Liu Bei. This guy has lived for a very long time. It's very difficult for us to develop under his command, let alone become the leader of a faction and obtain almost unlimited time. I wonder how Big-Eared Liu is doing now," Li Shui said. "I don't think so. At least, he hasn't obtained Nizhou yet." Bai Xiaowen said, looking at the reputation of a faction can explain a lot of things. We obtained our reputation when Liu Bei was still weak. If Liu Bei has become successful and his power has increased greatly in the past few years, our reputation will quickly shrink. We probably won't be able to retain our friendly reputation. Yes, that makes sense. Then let's draw the identity that comes with the ticket. We can obtain more information about the three kingdoms, Qiao Rui said. Bai Xiaowen nodded and chose to draw the ticket. After a series of actions, the laws of the spirit realm gave them 2 identity notifications. You have obtained entry identity A, Yuzhou Provincial Governor Yuan Shi, son of the Great General, Ji Prefecture Governor Yuan Xiao. Yuan Shi, courtesy name Shani, second son of Yuan Xiao. After Yuan Xiao defeated Gongsun Zan, Yuan Shi was appointed as the provincial governor of Yuzhou. As the provincial governor of Yuzhou and the second son of the Yuan family, you should resist Wuhuan in the north, command the troops of Yuzhou and Yan, drive away the troops of the desert, consolidate the Yuan family's rear, and provide the Yuan family with a large number of warhorses as support to win this large-scale war that will determine the fate of the country in the next 100 years. You have obtained entry identity B, Jiangxia Provincial Governor Lu Qi, son of the Great General of the South, Jingzhou Governor Lu Biao. Lu Qi, courtesy name Zifang, eldest son of Lu Biao. Afraid of being persecuted by his stepmother, Lu Qi followed Zhuge Liang's advice and asked to be sent to Jiangxia as the provincial governor of Jiangxia. As the provincial governor of Jiangxia and the eldest son of Lu Biao, you should train the navy, eliminate the pirates of the Yangtze River, guard against the invasion of the Sun family of Jiangnan, and fight for the fate of the Lu family. Chapter 1185. Which of these 2 identities should we choose? The 5 members of White Phoenix fell into deep thought. Li Shi raised his hand and asked, "Has Liu Bei already joined Lu Biao?" According to the normal development of the romance of the 3 kingdoms, when Yuan Shao and Cao Cao were fighting to unify the north, Liu Bei was under Yuan Shao's command, Bai Xiaowen said. However, the 3 kingdoms of the spiritual realm are different from the romance of the 3 kingdoms and the official history. Whether it is the development of history or the influence of the awakened, some details will change. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen said, from the introduction of Lu Qi's identity, Zhuge Liang was mentioned. There is a famous allusion to pulling out the ladder from the roof. This was the method Liu Bei taught Lu Qi. He got a plan to protect himself from Zhuge Liang and asked the station troops in Jiangxia. From this point of view, Liu Bei should not be under Yuan Shao's banner. He must have relied on Lu Biao and obtained Zhuge Liang's help. Li Shi said, then wouldn't it be better to use Lu Qi's identity? Jingzhou's geographical location is very important. We can expand to the north, south, east and west. We can make friends with Liu Bei and annex Jiangdong. According to the romance of the 3 kingdoms, Lu Biao is not far from death. When the time comes, we can directly take over Jingzhou and become the leader of the camp. Qiao Rui added, Lu Qi's identity is also considered a Han Dynasty clan member. This status is also very important. If you want to unify the country, becoming an emperor should be your highest goal. Lu Qi's identity can reduce some of the obstacles. Han Su and Cecilia moved their stools to watch. Bai Xiaowen said, what you said are the advantages of Lu Qi's identity. However, you also have to consider the disadvantages. Jingzhou's military and politics are mostly controlled by the rich families. The Kai family is one of the representatives. Lady Kai is Liu Biao's second wife. Needless to say, she has the power of pillow talk. Outside, Kai Mao is in charge of military affairs and has the most elite Xianyang army. Naturally, they fully support Liu Biao's youngest son, Liu Tsong, to become the crown prince. After all, he is Lady Kai's biological son. Li Shi said, the original Lu Qi could not deal with them. Do you think we can't deal with them? Bai Xiaowen sighed, it's not that we can't deal with them. If we want to make a move on Lady Kai, Lu's identity will be the biggest obstacle. The Han Dynasty was ruled by filial piety, and it was the same during the 3 Kingdoms era. Filial piety was very important. Although Madame Kai is Lu Qi's stepmother, she is still Lu Qi's mother in name. If you attack her and her relatives, Lu Qi's reputation will definitely plummet. Everyone will despise you for being unfilial. But the Yuan family's situation is even more complicated. Yuan Shi is not the eldest son, so it will be even more difficult for him to seize the throne, Qiao Rui said. But at least we don't have to be enemies with our parents. The only ones who can compete with Yuan Shi are his brothers, Bai Xiaowen said. It's much better for brothers to fight against each other than a son who brings misfortune to his parents. That's the point. Bai Xiaowen pointed at the information about Yuan Shi's identity. The information states that Yuan Shi must provide support to the Yuan dynasty in order to win this war that will determine the fate of the country for 100 years. In other words, Yuan Shao is currently engaged in a large-scale war in the north. The Battle of Guandu? Yuan Shao is fighting Cao Cao. Li Shi was quite knowledgeable in history. If Cao Cao wasn't killed by the Awakened, then they must be fighting Cao Cao. If Cao Cao died, then they must be fighting other warlords. No matter what, it's a crucial war, Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. A large-scale war means a drastic change. For the Awakened in the spiritual realm, change is a good thing. A stable and comfortable environment will make it impossible for them to do anything. To put it simply, the Awakened had to keep stirring up trouble and reap the benefits from it. It was not advisable to stay idle and develop. Oh. Lu Qi's environment is indeed too comfortable. Li Shi came to a realization. The Awakened could only stay in the spiritual realm for a short period of time. If they could not make progress in a short period of time, it meant that they could not trigger the subsequent main mission. That's enough about the situation. Let's look at the geographical environment. Needless to say, the provincial governor of Yuzhou province had the convenience of ruling a province. Additionally, Yuzhou province was rich in fine horses. The former provincial governor of Yuzhou province, Gongsun Zan, established the white horse righteous followers, which shocked the world. If we occupy Yuzhou, with Cecilia's ability to train the wing cavalry, we can expand our troops without restraint. We can lay a solid foundation for unifying the north and even establishing the world. Bai Xiaowen continued, what's there in the south? What's the use of naval warships? It's enough to protect themselves but not enough to expand. In history, Sun Quan repeatedly wanted to enter Hefei and open the door to the north, but he was stopped by Zhang Liao. Huaxia is a land country after all. You can only conquer the world on horseback. Throughout the history of Huaxia, except for Zhu Yuanzhang, the founder of the Ming dynasty, the other feudal dynasties all united the south. It's rare for the south to unify the north. Hearing the words rich in good horses, Cecilia's eyes lit up. She raised her hand and said, I agree to choose Yuan Shi. Qiao Rui said, Yuan Shi's surname is not Lu after all. The identity of a clan relative is very important. It doesn't matter. Anyway, after we enter the Three Kingdoms plane, we won't be in a hurry to become an emperor. It's in line with my plan to hold the emperor and command the vassals. Anyway, as long as we become the leader of the camp, Bai Xiaowen said with a smile. In the end, when we wipe out the other enemies and unify the world, there will be people who will persuade us to enter and support the emperor. At that time, the Han dynasty's clan relatives and righteousness will not be important. In a period of time when the world was not yet settled, becoming an emperor was courting death. For specific details, please refer to Yuan Shao's younger brother, Yuan Shu, who was originally a powerful warlord. In the end, he dreamed too much about becoming an emperor. In the end, before he woke up, he was jointly strangled by the vassals. Qiao Rui was also convinced and nodded in agreement. Do you have any objections? We choose the identity of the Yuzhou provincial governor, Yuan Shi. After selecting the identity, Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, the A-level ticket is really awesome. It saves us a lot of preparation work, and it's even harder to make up for the high-end background. Li Shi suddenly said, Xiaowen, is Yuan Shi's wife that Jinmi, Yin Fu, Bai Xiaowen? Ah, yes. The great beauty known as Goddess Luo? Was she later taken away by Chao Pai? Yes. A drop of sweat appeared on the back of Bai Xiaowen's head. Do you want to choose the identity of Yuan Shi so much because of this great beauty goddess Luo? Li Shi revealed her true intentions. No, absolutely not, Bai Xiaowen said with a straight face. Tisk, Li Shi curled her lips, but she did not pursue the matter further. The rules of the spiritual realm prompted the message, you have chosen the identity of the Yuzhou provincial governor, Yuan Shi. It has been detected that your teammates and you have entered the Three Kingdoms plane through the method of forming a team. A batch of blank identities will be generated for you to enter. Please choose for your teammates. 8. Chapter 1186. Bai Xiaowen looked at the identities he could choose from. There were 10 of them in total. Among them, the better identities were those of the lower and middle ranks, such as deputy generals and guards. The worse ones were Bai Xiaowen's guards and maids. Bai Xiaowen really wanted to match his teammates with the identities of the descendants of famous families. Unfortunately, such a good thing did not happen. Other than the identities of guards and maids, you can discuss the other identities freely. There's not much difference. In the end, the 4 of them made their choices. 2 deputy generals and 2 guards. Bai Xiaowen, as the son of Yuan Shi, did not need another name. His teammates, on the other hand, needed names. Li Shi had used the alias Li last time. This time, with a new identity, she hid the E at the end and changed her name to Li Shu. Han Su changed his name to Han Jiuyang. Cecilia's alias took some thought. In the end, she changed her name to Bai Sanyang. She was not afraid of offending others. According to the information gathered, during the previous realms of the Three Kingdoms, even female generals like Bao Sanyang were active on the battlefield of Nanjiang. There was nothing strange about Bai Sanyang. The last one that everyone found strange was Qiao Rui. She used her real name. When asked, Qiao Rui said, "When I was exploring the ancient Huaxia, I always used my real name." Although everyone found it strange, there was no harm in using her real name. As long as Qiao Rui was happy, it was fine. Deputy General Bai. Deputy General Li, Guard General Han. Guard General Qiao. The 4 teammates clasped their hands and imitated the ancient Huaxia etiquette. Bai Xiaowen was amused. What deputy general? No one in the Three Kingdoms was called that. Regardless of rank, they all called each other generals. If you call yourself that, it's this general or this general. It depends on the context. Bai Xiaowen corrected them. Right now, the identities of deputy generals and guards were not important. After Bai Xiaowen took over Yuzhou province, he would definitely reshuffle the forces in the army. By then, it would not be difficult for him to promote his 4 teammates to generals. All in all, the position of the provincial governor of Yuzhou province and the second son of the Yuan family were too good. The other benefits were all based on this identity. Of course, Bai Xiaowen had expected that as the provincial governor of Yuzhou province, Yuan Shi didn't have the same autonomy as the provincial governors of other provinces. After all, he had to follow Yuan Shao's order. Therefore, there must be various factions in the army, which were mainly generals who were loyal to Yuan Shao. If they carried out the purge recklessly and angered Yuan Shao, it would only take a single word from him to dismiss Yuan Shi. The Han dynasty was ruled by filial piety. If a son wanted to disobey his father, his reputation would be tarnished, and it would be even more difficult for him to convince his subordinates. Not to mention that Yuan Shi's subordinates had followed Yuan Shao for many years. As for how to control the limit and use Yuan Shi's skin, it still depends on the hunter's own means. After the identity selection was confirmed, Bai Xiaowen led the team directly into the Three Kingdoms plain. After the scenery was fixed, Bai Xiaowen's first reaction was to observe his surroundings. Unexpectedly, he was in a rather luxurious carriage. Bai Xiaowen was lying on a thick carpet. Beside him was a delicate maid who was carefully wiping Bai Xiaowen's forehead with a handkerchief. Seeing Bai Xiaowen open his eyes, the maid immediately cheered. "You're awake." "Sir is awake." In Bai Xiaowen's mind, a series of memories related to Yuan Shi flashed past. This was the necessary information given by the rules of the spiritual realm to transmigrate to another world. In addition, Bai Xiaowen's equipment was transformed by default. He didn't need to pay for it. The rules of the spiritual realm had very considerately transformed his equipment into Yuan Shi's normal attire. Thinking about it, it was the same for his other teammates. As for the language, Bai Xiaowen couldn't avoid it. He spent 100 spiritual energy points and obtained the common language of the Three Kingdoms plane. For the sake of smooth reading and writing, the dialogue is still mainly in the vernacular with some classical Chinese. I hope you can understand. So, I was on the way to Jizhou to visit my family. On the way, I was frightened by a ferocious beast. I had a high fever and was unconscious for most of the day. Bai Xiaowen sat up with a gentle push, scaring the delicate maid beside him. She urged Bai Xiaowen to lie down and rest. Bai Xiaowen glanced at the maid. This was Yuan Shi, his personal maid. Her name was Little Hong. According to his memory, Little Hong had already had an indescribable relationship with Yuan Shi. Therefore, she was braver than ordinary maids. Of course, Little Hong wasn't a concubine. She couldn't be compared to the official wife. Jinmi. This Little Hong is actually Jinmi's personal maid. After I became the provincial governor of Yuzhou, Jinmi sent her to accompany me and serve me? Was it also Jinmi's idea to sleep with me? Bai Xiaowen was a bit surprised. However, after thinking about it carefully, he felt that it was normal. According to the information he collected, Jinmi was indeed a virtuous woman in ancient Huaxia. For example, she was kind to her widows and sisters-in-law and persuaded her parents to help the villagers during the disaster. Later, when she married Chao Pai, she was very kind to Chao Pai's concubines. She also repeatedly persuaded Chao Pai to take more concubines and have more children. Regardless of how the later generations would evaluate this kind of character, she was the standard for women in the Three Kingdoms era. Not many women could do this. There were many vicious and jealous women in the Three Kingdoms era. For example, Mrs. Liu, the birth mother of Yuan Shi and his brothers, killed all 5 of Yuan Shao's concubines after his death. Because she was afraid that they would meet Yuan Shao after their deaths, she also destroyed their bodies, shaved their heads, tattooed their faces, and blackened their faces. When her husband, Yuan Shi, went on an inspection tour, Jinmi let her personal maid, Little Hong, sleep with him. She was generous and smart. The reason was hard to explain. After Little Hong shouted that Bai Xiaowen had woken up, a series of greetings could be heard from outside the curtain of the carriage. Is the young master well? The young master is finally awake. Fortunately, the young master is a blessed man. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, I'll go out for a while. Little Hong hurriedly stopped him. The young master has just woken up. His body is still a bit weak. He can't be exposed to the wind. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and directly lifted the curtain of the carriage. A gust of cold wind wrapped in snowflakes entered the carriage. Little Hong shivered. Of course, this bit of wind and snow was nothing to Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen pointed at the brocade quilt that had been spread out. If you're afraid of the cold, wrap it up. I don't need these things. He stood up on the shaft of the carriage and closed the thick curtain. Little Hong's face turned red. She inexplicably felt that her young master had become much more handsome. Although his appearance had not changed, there was a clear aura between his eyebrows. His eyes were bright and spirited, and his temperament was outstanding. In fact, this was also the distribution of charisma points by the rules of the spiritual realm. Originally, Yuan Shi's appearance was not bad, but compared to Bai Xiaowen, there was still a gap. In order to not reduce charisma points, the rules of the spiritual realm naturally made Bai Xiaowen's image more elegant. As soon as Bai Xiaowen stood up, he received a series of notifications. Your starting reputation in Ma Ting's camp is respected, hidden. Your starting reputation in Liu Biao's camp is respected, hidden. You're in Liu Bei's camp. Chapter 1187. Bai Xiaowen felt very comfortable when he saw a long string of notifications about his starting reputation points. There were more notifications. Note, your reputation with the various neutral factions will take effect after you come into direct contact with the target faction for the first time, or when the reputation of the target faction changes. Warning, if you lose the equipment Emperor's Crown, the hidden reputation will be removed. The things to note were very normal. For example, Bai Xiaowen's current reputation with Ma Tingjuan was hidden respect. However, no one in Ma Tingjuan had seen Bai Xiaowen before, so there was no actual reputation. When Bai Xiaowen went to Ma Tingjuan and came into contact with him for the first time, his reputation would be confirmed. Or when Bai Xiaowen did something earth-shattering and spread to Ma Tingjuan, his reputation would change, and his reputation would also be confirmed. Bai Xiaowen looked at these factions. Basically, they all had Lu Zhang, Lu Biao, Sun Su, Ma Teng, Zhang Lu, Zhang Jiao. That's right, Zhang Jiao's faction was still there, and this great teacher was still jumping around. Of course, it was not as good as it used to be. According to Yuan Shi's memories, Zhang Jiao disappeared after the Battle of Julu. No one knew where he hid with his defeated soldiers. He gave up Jizhou and quietly watched the world change. Seeing Bai Xiaowen come out, the soldiers beside the carriage hurriedly greeted him. Bai Xiaowen looked over. The two deputy generals, Cecilia and Li Shui, were on his left and right. The two deputy generals, Han Su and Qiao Rui, were also following behind. Other than these four teammates who could be called generals, there were also some elite bodyguards. There were also about 100 cavalrymen behind them. Bai Xiaowen mumbled a few words and dismissed the bodyguards. He asked for a horse and rode on it. This action surprised the personal guards. They didn't expect young Master Yuan Shi to ride a horse in such a snowy day with the other soldiers. It was a rare sight. Bai Xiaowen did not care that much. Some of Yuan Shi's previous habits of being pampered, or rather, the heirs of a rich and powerful family descendant, had to be thrown away. Only by starting small could he win the hearts of his troops. It was such a cold day, and the guards and cavalrymen were all braving the bitter cold. Yet, he was as warm as spring in the carriage, and there were even maids waiting on him. Gather the memories of each identity. Bai Xiaowen began chatting in the team channel. The four teammates said a few words to each other. The identities that they cut into were indeed blank. They were all the type of people who had no parents and no attachments. The memories and intelligence that they obtained were also very few. Bai Xiaowen focused on the information in Yuan Shi's memory and chose the useful ones to share. In this reincarnation, Mr. Chao was not killed in advance. So, it is still Chao's group that is competing with Yuan Chao. They are currently confronting each other in Guandu. Now, let's talk about the information of the four prefectures under Yuan Shao's command. In the east, Qingzhou, the eldest son, Yuan Tan, is the provincial governor. Qingzhou can be seen as Shandong in the Christian era, but the place near the sea is relatively barren and undeveloped. In the west, Bingzhou, my nephew, Gao Gan, is the provincial governor. In the west of Bingzhou is Liangzhou, bordering Shiliang and Mateng. In the north, Yuzhou, the second son. Ah, that is me, Yuan Shi, is the provincial governor. Yuzhou is mainly guarding against the northern Hu, Wuhuan. Yuan Shao uses a conciliatory policy to deal with the Hu. Wuhuan also contributed when he defeated Gongsun Zan. Currently, both sides are getting along well. There is also Jizhou in the central area, bordering Qingzhou, Bingzhou, and Yuzhou. It is in the southernmost part of Yuan Shao's territory. Yuan Shao is personally in charge of Jizhou. His favorite third son, which is my third brother, Yuan Shang, is also in Jizhou. Bai Xiaowen finally said, now Yuan Shao and Cao Cao are in a stalemate in Guandu. Most of the troops in the four prefectures have been transferred there. Yuan Tan and I still have to guard the two prefectures and can't go to war. Yuan Shang has always been by Yuan Shao's side. That's the general situation. Were the troops in Yuzhou also transferred there? Cecilia was more sensitive to military matters. She turned around and glanced at the cavalry troop of 100 people. Then these cavalry troops, I'm going to Jizhou to visit my parents. According to the Yuan family's rules, we have to go back to Jizhou to visit our parents every 3 months. These cavalry troops should be an escort team, Bai Xiaowen said according to his memory. In the spiritual realm's 3 kingdoms plane, the soldiers were all superhuman, compared to ordinary people. Their marching speed was much faster than the armies of the 3 kingdoms in history. Yuan Shao's control over the 4 prefectures was obviously stronger. The distance between Yuzhou and Jizhou was 700 to 800 miles, and it could be reached in 1 day. This was also the premise of the Yuan family's rule of visiting their parents. In the real ancient 3 kingdoms, transportation was inconvenient and the quality of the soldiers was weak. It would take 10 days to half a month to reach Jizhou from Yuzhou. Then, it would be impossible for them to go home often. In fact, visiting their parents was equivalent to debriefing. Yuan Shi and the others had to report their situation in detail to their father, Yuan Shao. Recently, Yuan Shao had gone to war, so the debriefing procedure was waived. However, the rule of visiting their parents was still maintained. Yuan Shi and the other brothers had to visit their birth mother, Madame Lu. The cavalry troop of 100 people also escorted some specialties and treasures from Yuzhou. They were all filial gifts to Madame Lu. A cavalry troop escorting a visit to their parents? There are only so many of them? Cecilia's eyes widened slightly. This is already the total number of cavalry a powerful lord in the northern province can have. This is because most of the Yuzhou troops were transferred to the battlefield in Guandu. Otherwise, the escort team would be even stronger, Li Shui said. The ancient Huaxia plane is really powerful. Cecilia could only sigh. What about Camille? That American chick? Li Shui asked. She should have come here with us. That should be the case. However, the spatial lock-on device she used is relatively low-end. She can't pinpoint our identities accurately. She might appear in other camps. But don't worry. The time she stays in the spiritual realm is with me. As long as we keep triggering the main mission, she won't be expelled from the 3 kingdoms plane unless she's looking for trouble. Then how do we meet up with them? Li Shui asked a silly question. Haha. Let them worry about this problem themselves. Bai Xiaowen laughed. Qiao Rui laughed as well. Then, he returned to the topic at hand. In the romance of the 3 kingdoms, Yuan Shao has always been hesitant about the appointment of his successor. However, with Yuan Shang, his 3rd brother, by his side, the latter's chances are much higher. Once there's a change in Yuan Shao, Yuan Shang can easily take the opportunity to ascend the throne. It's the same in the romance of the 3 kingdoms. Whether it's the appointment of a successor or the appointment of a favorite, I, Yuan Lauer, have no part in it. We still have to rely on ourselves. Bai Xiaowen pondered and said, I want to return to Yuzhou as soon as possible to grasp the situation in Yuzhou. However, inquiring about mother is a necessary procedure. We have to go. Actually, it's not a bad idea to go to Jizhou first. We can use the time to make some arrangements. Chapter 1188. After a brief discussion, Bai Xiaowen grabbed a cavalryman who looked like a captain and asked, How far are we from Yi City? Yi City was the capital of Ji province and also the residence of the Yuan family's general. The cavalryman replied, Provincial governor, we've already traveled half the distance. If we're not in a hurry and spend the night in the wilderness, we can reach Yi City by noon tomorrow. But Bai Xiaowen understood what he meant and said, Stop hemming and hawing. But what? Just say it. The captain hurriedly said, Because the governor suddenly fell ill, we're traveling slowly. It's been more than a day since we left Beiping. If we're any slower, we might miss the time. Bai Xiaowen knew that the 3 brothers of the Yuan family had agreed to visit their parents on the 5th day of every 3 months. Yuan Shi had already calculated the time when he set off. He wouldn't arrive too early or too late. Why didn't he go a few days earlier? Yuan Shi had his own considerations. As the second son of the Yuan family, Yuan Shi had no hope of inheriting Yuan Shao's position as general. He didn't want to attract attention and was neutral in everything he did to prevent his two powerful brothers from suspecting him. In short, he was willing to be a salted fish. He had calculated the time well, but who knew that he would fall ill and faint on the way? Bai Xiaowen nodded and asked, "How long will it take if we travel at full speed?" The captain thought for a while and said, "With the speed of the cavalrymen, we can arrive tonight. But it will be difficult for the carriages behind us to keep up." "It's okay." Bai Xiaowen already had a plan in mind. "I'll take a few capable men to Yi City first. You wait for the carriages and come back later." The carriages were transporting the gifts Yuan Shi prepared. They were mainly leather goods and some gold, silver, and jewelry. The value of these gifts was neither high nor low. They were inherited from Yuan Shi's way of being neutral. But the provincial governor has just recovered from his illness. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand to stop the cavalryman's concern. While talking with the cavalryman, he received a notification from the spiritual realm. Main mission, prepare the army, activated. Mission objective, recruit an army of your own. Mission difficulty, A+. Mission time limit, 15 days. Mission reward, unknown. There were further hints at the end. Note, combat power will be used as a standard to measure your mission completion. Warning, your army's combat power must not be lower than 5,000. Otherwise, you will fail the main mission. Bai Xiaowen had no time to complain. In order to save time, he arranged for Qiao Rui and Han Su to escort the carriage, while he himself led Li Shi and Cecilia. He also led 10 elite riders and rushed to Yi City at full speed. On the way, Bai Xiaowen inquired about the standards of combat strength data. The standard given by the Spirit Realm's laws was very simple. A standard advanced soldier had a combat power value of 5 to 8 points. Elite soldiers had 3 times the combat power of the same level. Bai Xiaowen did some calculations. A new recruit who had just joined the army, the standard template was only 5 points of combat strength. In other words, Bai Xiaowen had to recruit at least 1,000 ordinary soldiers to complete the main mission. This number was an impossible task for ordinary people. However, for Yozhou's provincial governor, Yuan Shi, it was not difficult. The difficult part was the restriction. It had to be an army that belonged to him. In other words, only an army that his chief father, Yuan Shao, could not mobilize could count. Bai Xiaowen deliberately inquired about the meaning of belonged to him. He had a premonition that there was a trap. He checked. Sure enough. The Yuzhou army was basically Yuan Shao's subordinates. Through these generals, he spent Yozhou's tax money and food to recruit soldiers. No matter how many soldiers he recruited, they would not belong to Bai Xiaowen. In essence, they were still Yuan Shao's army. Only the money and food that Bai Xiaowen obtained himself and the soldiers that he recruited himself would belong to him. The concept of soldiers in the Three Kingdoms era was also very simple. As a soldier, they ate food and worked under the command of whoever they served. In this way, it would not be so easy to recruit 1,000 ordinary soldiers with his own strength. Moreover, 5,000 combat power was only the minimum standard of the spiritual realm. Only when the combat power exceeded 5,000 would there be a completion rating. This completion rating is very important. It is related to whether the second main mission can be activated. Bai Xiaowen recalled his first adventure in the Cane Plain. He entered as the White Stone Overlord, and the first main mission was also to recruit soldiers. In the end, he recruited a group of soldiers that were not weaker than the other overlords. Only then did he obtain the qualifications to continue participating in the war at the Black Rock defense line. In other words, he was qualified to continue the second main mission. Bai Xiaowen estimated that in the extremely difficult Three Kingdoms world, he would have to recruit at least a few thousand soldiers with a combat power of more than 10,000 to be qualified to activate the next stage of the main mission. This is asking me to cause trouble. Bai Xiaowen thought silently as he galloped on his horse. However, the Awakened were not afraid of causing trouble. They were only afraid of having nothing to do. As long as one's thinking was not slippery, there would always be more solutions than difficulties. 10 cavalrymen followed closely behind him. Due to their strong physical fitness, they could withstand the north wind and snow. Such cavalrymen could travel thousands of miles in a day. They were much faster than ordinary infantry. The spiritual realm warhorses were also many times stronger than the ordinary horses of the Christian era. Whether it was speed or endurance, they were incomparable. Of course, after galloping for a while, they still had to stop to rest their horses. Otherwise, the spiritual realm warhorses would not be able to withstand it. After the main mission refreshed, the spiritual realm's rules prompted him again. Based on your spiritual realm ticket prefix, challenge, and your current identity, a hero challenge mission has been generated. Hero side mission, mystery in the box, activated. Mission objective, go to Champing City and find a professional who can unlock the mysterious artifact, Dragon Golden Box. Mission difficulty, a mission duration, none, equivalent to the remaining time you stay in the Three Kingdoms world. Mission reward, unknown. After Bai Xiaowen shared with him, Li Shi was a little confused. The Dragon Golden Box is our spoils of war. The spiritual realm's rules generated a challenge mission based on the ticket prefix. How can the Dragon Golden Box be involved? Is the spiritual realm's rules lazy? We have lost a hero mission for no reason. It's a great loss. According to Li Shi's understanding, the Dragon Golden Box was a special item. Bai Xiaowen would be able to uncover its mission line sooner or later. The spiritual realm's rules generated a hero-level challenge mission based on the challenge prefix. It should be independent. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "Don't worry too much. This prefix did contribute something. At least it gave us clues about the Dragon Golden Box. We can find it in Champing City. Otherwise, we might not be able to find the clues to unlock it by ourselves. Don't forget that Yang Guang never understood the mystery of this thing." Chapter 1189. Where's Champing City? Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen briefly searched for the information in his memory. It's also in Yuzhou, Liaodong. Speaking of which, it's not far from Beiping City, where the Yuzhou provincial governor's office is located. Oh. Li Shi nodded and said worriedly, our missions are all in Yuzhou, but now we have to go to Jizhou and waste time. Alas, I don't know if we have enough time to complete the mission. Bai Xiaowen laughed. Who said that going to Jizhou is a waste of time? That evening, Bai Xiaowen, who was wrapped in snow in his leather robe, led 10 cavalrymen to Yi City. The city gate of Yi City was already closed. Open the gate! Bai Xiaowen raised a torch and shouted. Who are you? The guards stood on top of the city gate and shouted as well. I'm the Yuzhou provincial governor, Yuan Shi. The guard was startled and said, Do you have any proof? The Yuzhou provincial governor's seal is here. Bai Xiaowen took out the Yuzhou provincial governor's seal from his bag. A hanging basket hung down from the city gate and quickly hung the Yuzhou provincial governor's seal. After the guard checked it, he didn't open the gate immediately. Instead, he hung the Yuzhou provincial governor's seal and said, It's late and the light is dim. It's hard to verify its authenticity. Please camp outside the city for the night. We'll open the gate early tomorrow morning. Before Bai Xiaowen could say anything, the 10 cavalrymen behind him began to scold him. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. This guard seemed to be deliberately making things difficult for him. With a clang, Bai Xiaowen drew his sword, transformed by the rules of the spiritual realm, and shouted, I'm the Yuzhou provincial governor, the son of the great general. I've been ordered to return to my hometown to visit my family. Since you've checked the Yuzhou provincial governor's seal, how dare you stop me? Are you trying to bully my sword? Under the light of the torch, the guard felt fear when he saw Bai Xiaowen's majestic aura. After a moment of hesitation, the guard gave in. Second young master, please wait for a moment. This lowly one is under third young master's orders to strictly guard the city and not let unrelated people into the city. That's why this lowly one dares to stop you. Since second young master is here, I will open the door. With a creak, the drawbridge was lowered. Bai Xiaowen snorted and rode into the city, followed by 10 cavalrymen. After entering the city, the murderous aura on Bai Xiaowen's face disappeared without a trace. Facing the somewhat uneasy gatekeeper, Bai Xiaowen said, "Guarding the gate is your duty, I won't blame you. However, if you still want to stop me after checking the seal, then that's your fault. Since it's your first offense, I'll forgive you for now. If there's a next time, you'll be executed without mercy." The guard wiped his sweat as he watched Bai Xiaowen's dozen riders enter Middle Street and leave. He muttered in his heart, when did second young master become so dignified? He was actually the same as the great general, making people unable to think of disobeying him. Not to mention the lieutenant guarding the gate, the 10 elite cavalrymen following Bai Xiaowen were also slightly shocked in their hearts. It was rare for Bai Xiaowen to give up his comfortable carriage and ride in the snow to travel with them. Now, he was angrily scolding the guard in front of the city gate. His domineering style was completely different from the usual second young master. Bai Xiaowen wasn't afraid that others would think his behavior was abnormal. The three kingdoms were different from the fantasy world of the West. They didn't know much about other worlds. Basically, no one would think of the possibility that Yuan Shi had been transmigrated. Especially his acquaintances in Yi City. They hadn't seen Yuan Shi for 3 months. It wasn't hard to explain the change in second young master Yuan's temperament. Bai Xiaowen didn't even change his clothes and directly entered the great general's mansion. While waiting for the announcement, he opened the peony leaf painting and muttered a few lines of poetry. Li Shi secretly curled his lips. It was about time to light the lanterns and Madame Lu hadn't gone to bed yet. When he heard that second young master Yuan had arrived, he called Bai Xiaowen in for a chat. "Child, why are you covered in snow and mud? You're in such a sorry state." Madame Lu was shocked when she saw Yuan Shi. Bai Xiaowen followed the etiquette of the Han dynasty and bowed to his birth mother, Madame Lu. He said, "I set out to visit mother yesterday. Unexpectedly, I got sick on the way and fell into a coma for half a day. When I woke up today, I saw that the date was approaching. I was so anxious that I rushed over with my men. I didn't clean myself up and didn't bring any gifts for mother. Please forgive me for being disrespectful to mother. Sigh, you child." Madame Lu didn't like her second son very much. For some reason, she felt that he was very pleasing to the eye today. When she saw that Bai Xiaowen's forehead was covered in sweat mixed with snow, Madame Lu was worried that he would fall sick. She quickly ordered 4 servants to help Bai Xiaowen bathe and change his clothes. After taking a bath, Bai Xiaowen changed into an illusionary appearance, which made him look even more refined. Even his slightly above-average appearance, which he had inherited from Yuan Shi, was enhanced by his temperament, making him look even more handsome. When he went to see Madame Lu again, there were already a few more people in the hall. Bai Xiaowen saw his cheap wife, Jinmi, at first glance. Jinmi was too dazzling. She stood quietly behind Madame Lu. Although she wasn't in the center position, she overshadowed Madame Lu, who was in the center position. Her forehead was exposed by her coiled snake bun. As the saying goes, men are afraid of showing their heads, while women are afraid of showing their foreheads. Logically speaking, this kind of hairstyle without bangs could easily make a beauty lose a level of beauty. However, Jinmi was beautiful from all angles. Bai Xiaowen had strong self-control. His gaze only flickered before sliding past Jinmi's face and sweeping across the hall. Other than Madame Lu, there was also a young man and a young man in the hall. They were both dressed in luxurious clothing and had a trace of arrogance. Needless to say, Bai Xiaowen knew that these two must be his cheap brothers. The eldest, Yuan Tan, and the third, Yuan Shan. "Second brother, why are you only here now? I arrived in Yi City 3 days ago." Yuan Shan chuckled and said, "In the future, you have to be more attentive to mother. If other people knew, they would think that there was some kind of barrier between you and mother." Bai Xiaowen glanced at Yuan Shan. This fellow was indeed as described in the novel. He was quite good-looking. His looks were even better than Yuan Tan and Yuan Shi. Moreover, he had a certain amount of courage. No wonder Yuan Shao liked him the most. Even when the army went to war, Yuan Shao brought him along. To Yuan Shang's surprise, Madame Lu spoke first. "Shang, your second brother is sick, but he still rushed over to pay his respects to me. I know this filial piety of his. Don't say too much." Yuan Shang could only lower his head and agree. Bai Xiaowen ridiculed in his heart. If Yuan Shi wasn't afraid that this grandson would misunderstand, why didn't she rush over in advance? However, these words were not suitable to be said in front of Madame Lu. Otherwise, with Madame Lu's usual preference for Yuan Shang, if the two argued, the one who would suffer would only be Bai Xiaowen. Inherent views couldn't be changed in a short period of time by a person's image or superior charm. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Third brother, you are right. However, Yozhou's affairs are important and Wuhuan and Xiangping are unstable. I could only put official matters first and rushed over after I finished my work. That's why I was late. Third brother, you have always been with father and have no worries. I dare not compare myself to you." Chapter 1190. The so-called Wuhuan and Xiangping are unstable was just an excuse Bai Xiaowen came up with. Other than fighting back against Yuan Shang, it was mainly to prepare for the return trip. If they stayed in Jizhou for more than 10 days, more than half of the main mission's time would have passed. It would be extremely difficult to recruit soldiers. Bai Xiaowen's words were sarcastic, but his tone and expression were sincere. Although Yuan Shan was annoyed, he couldn't tell if his second brother was mocking him or telling the truth. Madame Lu was inexperienced and couldn't tell. She said with concern, "Sheer, did something really happen in Yuzhou? Those damned who are truly greedy by nature. The rewards your father has given them over the years are uncountable, but they're still not satisfied." Bai Xiaowen said, "Mother, I heard from a secret source that the Wuhuan tribe is colluding with some underground forces in Xiangping. They seem to have bad intentions. Mother, please do not mention this information to anyone else." "Of course." Madame Lu nodded. Bai Xiaowen said, "I'm afraid I can't stay in Yi City for long. I have to return as soon as possible." Madame Lu rebuked, "Since you have something to do, why do you have to be so tired? It's so hard." Bai Xiaowen's words were as sweet as honey. "I haven't seen you for 3 months. I miss you, but I'm afraid you'll be worried if I don't arrive on the agreed date." Okay. Madame Lu now found Bai Xiaowen pleasing to the eye. Yuan Shang felt an inexplicable sense of displeasure. He said respectfully, "It's late. Please rest early. We'll come to pay our respects tomorrow." Yuan Tan, who had been silent all this time, said with anger in his heart, "That's right. I'll bring my second brother and third brother to pay our respects tomorrow." Even Madame Lu could see the discord between her eldest brother and third brother. She sighed and felt a little dispirited. She waved her hand and said, "Forget it. Sheer, the journey is bumpy and tiring. You should rest early. Mir, take care of your husband and go to bed early." Jinmi said softly, "Yes." It was just a single word, but it was like a rolling jade bead, moving the heart. Bai Xiaowen glanced at Yuan Tan and Yuan Shang's expressions. When they saw Jinmi appear, both of them were stunned for a moment. It seemed that Jinmi's charm could really kill anyone. The great general's mansion occupied a large area. Yuan Shi's original residence had all kinds of pavilions, terraces, and pavilions, as well as a bamboo garden. Li Shi, Cecilia, and 10 elite horsemen were arranged to stay in the side rooms. Jinmi, on the other hand, gracefully headed to the main bedroom. She ordered the servants to tidy up the lawn quilt and prepared to share a bed with her husband, whom she had not seen for 3 months. Li Shi secretly tugged at the corner of Bai Xiaowen's clothes with a hint of playfulness in his eyes. "Jinmi has to stay calm. She's an important part of my plan." Bai Xiaowen raised his hands in surrender. "I've already scanned her. She's a level 8 leader. Although she's not a combat type, alright. Li Shi's cheeks were a little red. If you want to sleep with her, then go ahead. I'm not stopping you. Bai Xiaowen was not fooled. He laughed and said, don't worry, I won't sleep with her tonight. I'm a serious person. Also, I already have plans for tonight. The last sentence is the main point. Li Shi complained. Bai Xiaowen laughed mischievously. Husband, it's almost midnight. Shall I serve you to bed? Under the candlelight, Jinmi's small face was rosy, which made her even more beautiful. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, there's no hurry. I have something important to do tonight, so I won't be spending the night in the mansion. Jinmi was a little surprised. It's so late, there are some things that are better done at night than during the day. For example, serving you in bed. Bai Xiaowen smiled and got up. He hooked Jinmi's soft waist and said, it's been 3 months, and I miss you very much. But work is more important. My wife, please don't take offense. Bai Xiaowen had no choice. He needed to rely on Jinmi, but if he didn't sleep with Jinmi tonight, what if Jinmi mistakenly thought that he had a lover in Yuzhou? What would he do if that happened? Therefore, he had to show a certain degree of intimacy. The key was to show that he still doted on Jinmi. It was necessary. Jinmi was so embarrassed that she lowered her head. Husband, please be serious. Bai Xiaowen smiled and let go of Jinmi. I haven't seen my beloved wife dance for 3 months. Can you show me again? Bai Xiaowen saw through his insight that Jinmi wasn't a combat-type leader. Instead, she was a special rare leader. Her role was more of a support, but she was different from Qiao Rui, who was a direct support on the battlefield. Jinmi's job was Goddess Luo Dancer. She had a special skill, Feng Yi. Feng Yi, passive. Jinmi's luck is indescribably precious. If the husband and wife's fate matches, the dragon and phoenix will sing, and the zither will be harmonious. They will soar to the sky. If the husband and wife's fate is low, the yin will prevail and the yang will decline. The description of Feng Yi's special skill was too vague. After Bai Xiaowen saw it, he was a little confused. In contrast, Jinmi's other skills were easier to understand. Dance, it was all about dancing. For example, Whirlwind Dance was a dance that gave allies in a small area a fixed damage reduction buff for 72 hours. The smaller the number of people watching the dance, the stronger the buff effect. However, it couldn't be stacked and could only take effect on a group of people at the same time. Another example was Whirlwind Dance, which gave allies in a small area a long-term charm buff. The strength of the buff effect was the same as described above. In addition, there were also Blazing Dance, Ecstasy Dance, and so on. Each had its own unique effects. Jinmi restrained her expression and bowed. Since my husband has important matters to attend to, I dare not entertain you with my beauty. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, my dear wife misunderstood. I don't want to enjoy an ordinary dance. As he spoke, Bai Xiaowen stood up and continued, I'm going to Jizhou's prison tonight to meet Mr. Tian Feng and reason with him. Mr. Tian is the head of Jizhou's Julu's Tian family. I need his support. In addition, I want to pay a visit to the Jin family. Jinmi was slightly startled. Then, she smiled like a blooming flower. Since my husband wants to recruit talents and achieve great things, please allow me to perform the Whirlwind Dance to help you gain your prestige. After the dance, Bai Xiaowen looked at the notification of the Spirit Realm's rules and the new status on his interface. He was shocked. You've enjoyed the Whirlwind Dance of Luotian Dancer Jinmi by yourself. You've obtained the status of Whirlwind Dance. Whirlwind Dance, your basic charm increases by 20 points. Lasts for 72 hours. Jinmi's voice sounded. My husband, I'll write a letter to my father immediately. If you take this letter to the Jin family, it should be easier for you to gain something. Bai Xiaowen couldn't help but ask. My dear wife, why don't you ask me what great things I want to do and if they're feasible? You're giving me your unreserved support. I'm just a woman. How would I know about great things? I can only do my best to support my husband. Jinmi smiled. Moreover, if my husband can really persuade Mr. Tian and my father to cooperate with you, then it means that the great things my husband is planning will definitely work. Chapter 1191. Bai Xiaowen left the main room with mixed feelings. Through the team channel, Li Shiyi and Cecilia quickly walked out of the room in full military attire. They followed Bai Xiaowen out of the general's residence through a small door. Xiaowen, what did you say to Jinmi? Why do I feel like you've become more handsome? Under the moonlight, Li Shiyi carefully looked at Bai Xiaowen. See for yourself. Bai Xiaowen showed the status of flowing goblet lingering charm to the two of them. Wow! 20 points of charm? 72 hours. Li Shiyi and Cecilia widened their eyes. Their focus was different, but they summarized the strength of the flowing goblet lingering charm status. Bai Xiaowen said, Jinmi has a total of 4 dance skills, except for a special technique that is vaguely described. The flowing goblet dance is one of them. Bai Xiaowen roughly recounted his conversation with Jinmi. Li Shiyi was shocked. After 3 shocks, he said, this woman is unusual. She had restrained herself and advised her husband not to entertain him with her beauty. This was what a good wife would do. It seemed normal, but it was better than Diao Chan and the romance of the 3 kingdoms. After learning that Bai Xiaowen had a big plan, Jinmi seemed to support her husband brainlessly, but in fact, she was not. Her last sentence revealed her intelligence. Bai Xiaowen's big plan was based on convincing Tianfeng and the head of the Jin family. If they couldn't convince them, then nothing would happen. Jinmi didn't need to worry. If they could convince them, then it meant that Bai Xiaowen's plan was highly feasible and profitable. Jinmi's full support would be even more appropriate. In short, Tianfeng and the head of the Jin family would be in charge. That was why the Jinmi did not ask about the details of the plan. Although Li Shiyi couldn't think of so much in a hurry, she instinctively felt that Jinmi was very powerful. Xiaowen, how much charisma do you have now? Li Shiyi asked. Charm is a hidden attribute. I can't see my basic charm, so I'm not sure. On top of the fixed value, I added these 20 points. Then, there's the percentage bonus. The Son of Heaven's crown added 30%. Because the leaf covering peony painting is set in the ancient Huaxia, it should also be close to the upper limit of 30%. At this point, Bai Xiaowen felt a little emotional. I feel that my charm can be considered a special skill now. When I met Mrs. Liu, I could clearly feel the effect of my charm. Mrs. Liu's attitude towards me was completely different from what Yuan she remembered. So powerful. Why don't you go directly to Yuan Shao and see if he will appoint you as his successor? Li Shiyi said with a smile. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. That's not how you use your charm. No matter how high your charm is, it will only make the people in the spiritual world have a better impression of you. The chances of them accepting your reasonable suggestions will be higher. It's similar to the domineering aura in the novel. However, it doesn't mean that it's a halo that reduces intelligence. It can't make people change their minds or accept obviously ridiculous suggestions. Even if we go to see Yuan Shao, his impression of me will at most change a little. With his indecisive personality, he won't immediately make the decision to appoint an heir. We still have to rely on our own efforts. Bai Xiaowen pulled the topic back. Then why do you want to see Tianfeng and the head of the Jin family? Li Shiyi asked. Bai Xiaowen said, these 2 people are the most suitable allies that I can find in Jizhou based on Yuan Shi's memories. Tianfeng was the same as in the romance of the 3 kingdoms. He was imprisoned by Yuan Shao because of his righteous words. As for the head of the Jin family, he surprised me a little. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen continued, the current head of the Jin family is still Jinmi's father, Jin Yi. What's so strange about that? Li Shiyi asked. In the history, Jin Yi died of illness when Jinmi was 3 years old, Bai Xiaowen said. However, in Yuan Shi's memories, my father-in-law has always been very healthy. Okay, the appearance and departure times of the characters in the three kingdoms of the spiritual world don't necessarily coincide with the history of the romance of the three kingdoms, Li Shi said. This made me conclude a pattern, Bai Xiaowen said. The characters in the spiritual world, perhaps because their physical fitness is far superior to that of ordinary people. Therefore, the characters who leave due to illness are likely to be healthy and active all the time. Look at the virtuous teacher Zhang Jiao. He died of illness long ago in the romance of the three kingdoms, but he's still active now. He's just missing. Li Shi thought about it and nodded. It seemed to be the case. Fortunately, we didn't choose to enter as Lu Qi, Bai Xiaowen sighed. In the romance of the three kingdoms, Lu Biao also died of illness. So, in this world, Lu Biao is likely to still be healthy. If we entered as Lu Qi, it's impossible to wait until Lu Biao dies of illness to seize power. We can't afford to delay. Then, Yuan Shao's death seems to be due to illness, right? Li Shi said with uncertainty. Yes, Yuan Shao died of illness not long after he was defeated in Guandu and returned to Jizhou, Bai Xiaowen said. Then, according to what you said, Yuan Shao should be able to survive. Li Shi curled his lips. Bai Xiaowen showed an inexplicable smile. No, he won't be able to survive. You're not trying to kill him, are you? A child brings bad luck to his father. His reputation will be ruined. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. Yuan Shao and Cao Cao fought. This kind of violent environment is suitable for us to stir up trouble. Yuan Shao was defeated and fled. Anything could happen. If it was Lu Biao's side, the environment would be more comfortable and we wouldn't have such an opportunity. Then, should we go to the Jin family first or Tianfeng first? Cecilia asked. Bai Xiaowen said, no, let's go to Yuan Shao's study first. The three of them walked through the courtyard and swaggered forward. When they met the soldiers on night patrol, Bai Xiaowen revealed his identity as the second young master Yuan. No one dared to stop them. In front of Yuan Shao's study, two guards stopped Bai Xiaowen. Second young master, this is the general's study. Please be careful, one of them said. Bai Xiaowen said, the situation in Yuzhou is unstable. Wu Huan seems to be suspected of rebelling. I need to find my father's information on the Hu people over the years to formulate a countermeasure. Get out of the way. This. The two guards hesitated for a moment. This was the advantage of Yuan Shi's identity. If it were an ordinary person, the two guards would have drawn their swords and no one would waste time talking to them. Bai Xiaowen slapped down 2 gold ingots. You two worked hard on the night patrol. I won't let you do it for free. Yes, thank you, second young master. Perhaps it was because of his charm, the 2 guards bowed and got out of the way. Yuan Shao was not strict with his subordinates. If it were Cao Cao, Bai Xiaowen would not have been able to barge into Cao Cao's study. However, if the guards insisted on stopping him, Bai Xiaowen had other ways. For example, he could use the shadow assassins to sneak in. However, that was not as convenient as Bai Xiaowen entering openly. Chapter 1192. He entered Yuan Shao's study so easily, Li Shi truly felt the benefits of Bai Xiaowen's high charm. Combined with his identity as the second son of Yuan Shi, in the eyes of the people of the spiritual realm, high charm was a kind of wise ruler aura. Li Shi suddenly remembered something. Xiaowen, the effect of your peony leaf cover painting only lasts for 2 hours, right? Should we hurry and find Tianfeng and Zhenyi? Once the time passes, the effect of the peony leaf cover painting will disappear. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, as the head of the Jin family, Zhenyi shouldn't be a short-sighted person. Tianfeng is also a great talent with great strategic vision. If we want to convince them, we can't do it without some solid evidence. Charm is only a supporting role. Even without the peony leaf cover painting, the charm of the Emperor's crown and flowing goblet lingering charm will be enough. The most important thing now is to collect information about the current situation in the Three Kingdoms plane and verify whether my idea is feasible or not. If the history of the spiritual realm was exactly the same as the romance of the three kingdoms, Bai Xiaowen didn't need to study the information in Yuan Shao's study. He could go directly to Tianfeng and scare this great talent. However, the history of the spiritual realm was different from the romance of the three kingdoms and the official history. Bai Xiaowen didn't know many details. If he said something wrong, not only would he become a laughingstock, but losing Tianfeng's trust and the overall plan couldn't be carried out, which was the most fatal thing. Li Shi agreed and didn't ask any more questions. Together with Cecilia, he helped Bai Xiaowen light the candles and then brought in bundles of bamboo slips and silk books. It was the end of the Eastern Han dynasty. Although Kailuan had improved the papermaking technique, it wasn't popularized yet. The mainstream medium of writing was still bamboo slips and silk. By the time paper became popular, it was already 100 or 200 years later. Bai Xiaowen focused, his eyes like a camera, scanning the precious and important information. First, he found a geographical map of the 13 prefectures. On it were the names of the forces that occupied each prefecture. This map was very important, so Bai Xiaowen memorized it first. Next was the map of the 4 prefectures of Hebei, which included the names of the governors, generals, soldiers, population, and so on. The information on Xi Province, Yan Province, Su Province, and other places under Cao Cao's rule was false and true. Because the two sides were facing off against each other, Yuan Shao was very concerned about this information and recorded it in detail. As for the other regions, such as Ma Teng, Lu Biao, Sun Su, Lu Zhang and so on, they were much simpler. They only had the rough military strength of the leaders, such as Ma Teng's 100,000 elite cavalry, Lu Biao's 200,000 water infantry and so on. Even further away, Shirxiev Jiao State in the south only had a name. Bai Xiaowen focused on military intelligence. Unfortunately, Yuan Shao was currently in the frontline camp, and all military intelligence was sent to him instead of his base in Jizhou. The intelligence in this study was somewhat outdated. Most of the intelligence was from 2 to 3 months ago, or even half a year ago. Otherwise, the guards would not have let Bai Xiaowen in so easily. It's about time. After Bai Xiaowen finished sweeping through the thick stack of silk books and the small mountain of bamboo slips, he rubbed the space between his eyebrows and said with a trace of exhaustion, "Put these slips back to their original places." Li Shi and Cecilia did as they were told. Bai Xiaowen closed his eyes and digested the information in his mind. After Li Shi and Cecilia tidied up, Bai Xiaowen finally sighed and opened his eyes. "Let's go to Jizhou's prison to see Tianfeng." On the way, Bai Xiaowen briefly communicated the situation to Li Shi and Cecilia. The confrontation in Guandu is generally similar to the romance of the three kingdoms, Bai Xiaowen said. Yuan Shao has a strong foundation. He has 700,000 soldiers and horses in the 4 prefectures. Cao Cao only has 300,000 soldiers and doesn't have much food. Even many of Cao Cao's subordinates secretly wrote letters to express their loyalty. It can be seen that most of the natives in the 3 kingdoms are pessimistic about Cao Cao. 700,000. 700,000? Cecilia's eyes widened. Both sides together have 1,000,000 soldiers? Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, during the 3 kingdoms era, there were no detailed intelligence methods. They could only estimate the number of soldiers and horses based on the banners. Therefore, when the feudal lords mobilized their troops, they would often feign their banners and exaggerate the power of their troops so that the enemy would be frightened and surrender without a fight. There is a saying in Sun Tzu's Art of War, to subdue the enemy without a fight. Yuan Shao gathered the soldiers of the 4 prefectures and said that he had 700,000 soldiers. Even a 50% discount wouldn't be enough. As for Cao Cao, he was just pretending to be powerful. It would be good if he had 100,000 soldiers out of 300,000. Li Shi also had experience in this. He said, the number of soldiers in ancient Huaxia included the weak auxiliary soldiers and militia. In an army of 100,000, there might only be 10 to 20,000 truly elite soldiers. Bai Xiaowen said, if we measure the strength of the militia according to normal standards, they would indeed be weak and would not reach the standard. For example, in the Ramses dimension. However, the three kingdoms are different. Due to the popularity, the overall strength of the people in the spiritual realm is raised. The militia is also a standard and cannot be underestimated. Cecilia sighed. She felt a little numb. In the Jizhou prison, Bai Xiaowen did not spend much effort. With his identity as the second young master of the Yuan family, he easily saw Tianfeng imprisoned in prison. Although Tianfeng was imprisoned, he was treated well. In a single cell, there were candles and books. Although the bed was simple, it was not dirty or messy. There were two reasons. Firstly, Tianfeng's identity was important and the jailers did not dare to do anything to this old strategist. Secondly, Tianfeng was the patriarch of a large family in Jizhou and had the support of the Tian family of Julu behind him. Bai Xiaowen saw Tianfeng and glanced at him. Tianfeng's beard was white and his face was old, but he was in good spirits. Second young master? Aren't you supposed to be in charge of Yuzhou? Tianfeng was surprised to see Bai Xiaowen. Greetings, Sir Tian. Bai Xiaowen's attitude was very humble. He first greeted him with the etiquette of a junior and then replied, I returned from Yuzhou to visit my parents and have already paid my respects to my mother. I heard that Sir Tian was imprisoned by my father and was terrified, so I came to pay my respects. Tianfeng was even more surprised. In his memory, he did not have much of a relationship with the second young master of the Yuan family. Forget it. Tianfeng coughed a few times. I'm a criminal, so I don't dare to trouble you. Second young master, if I may ask, what's the situation of the battle between the Lord and Cao Cao? Bai Xiaowen searched the information in Yuan Xiao's study and combined it with Yuan Shi's memories. He said slowly, I've been in Yuzhou for a long time, so I don't know much. I only heard that my father and Cao Cao fought 2 rounds and both won and lost. They are currently in a stalemate in Guandu and cannot win. Chapter 1193. Tianfeng's old face revealed a gratified expression, stalemate. A stalemate is good. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, you are right. Tianfeng turned his head and looked at Bai Xiaowen, second young master, can you understand what I mean? His tone seemed to have a bit of disbelief. Bai Xiaowen knew that the original Yuan Shi did not have a high opinion of the Hebei officials and generals. One of the reasons was that Yuan Shao did not value his second son. The most important reason was that Yuan Shi's ability was mediocre. Hence, to convince Tianfeng, he had to show that he had a good foresight and could not be too eager to show it off. Ancient Huaxia was different from ancient Europe. The Confucian culture was reserved. Even if one had some knowledge, showing off too much would only make people look down on them. This was also the reason why many foreigners could not get along well in ancient Huaxia. One had to be careful when it came to advancing and retreating. Bai Xiaowen bowed respectfully and said, Tiangong's deep meaning, I can't fully understand it. I can only tell you a little bit of my shallow opinion. I hope Tiangong won't blame me for any mistakes. On the surface, Tianfeng's expression did not change, but in fact, there was a ripple in his heart. Second young master Yuan did not seem to be so respectful to a retainer or advisor like him. However, this slight ripple did not cause any splashes. Tianfeng had seen many people. This kind of respect was not enough to make him change his mind. When Yuan Shao took over Jizhou, he also paid him a lot of money to hire him. What about now? Tianfeng coughed and said, Second young master, you can try. Bai Xiaowen nodded, when 2 armies fight, what we fight for is not a momentary victory. We have to look at the overall situation. Our 4 prefectures of Hebei have rested for a long time. We have enough grain and many soldiers. Cao Cao fought for years, killing Lu Bu and chasing Liu Bei. Now, he is fighting with our army. The problem of grain shortage is obvious. However, our army has different orders and is not familiar with battle formations. In terms of elite, we are not as good as Cao Cao's army. Due to these 2 points, Cao Cao is fighting quickly while our army is exhausting. Now that Guandu is in a stalemate, it is obviously in our interest. Yuan Shao had a large army, but the number of elite troops that had gone through the trials of war was small, and they were not as good as the Cao army. If one were to use the combat strength data to measure, Yuan Shao's soldiers would have an average combat strength of 5 or 6 points, while Cao Cao's soldiers had more than 8 points. Based on the actual numbers of both sides, Yuan Shao's 300,000 troops, actual numbers, had a fighting strength of 1.5 million, while Cao Cao's army had a fighting strength of 800,000 to 900,000. Of course, in a real fight, it was not based on the combat power on paper. The situation of a battle was ever-changing. The ability of the commander, the bravery of the generals, and many other factors would affect the outcome of the battle. Moreover, when the difference in combat strength was not too great, elite soldiers would be able to display their advantage. After all, wars were fought one after another. On the same battlefield, there was a limit to the number of soldiers that could be deployed. Yuan Shao's large and bloated army was unable to fully display its strength. However, Yuan Shao had prepared sufficient rations, and the army would not feel any pressure even after a few months. Cao Cao's rations could only last for a month. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the Cao army was almost out of food when Suyu came. The situation of the Cao family organization was similar to the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, so they naturally had problems with rations. When Tianfeng heard that, he nodded and said, "Second young master is right. The Cao army has won many battles and is flourishing. When I advised the Lord not to fight the Cao army, and instead to slowly advance and exert pressure, it was for this reason. If the Lord can use my words, in less than 3 years, Cao Cao will be exhausted, and our army will win without a fight." After pausing for a moment, Tianfeng stood up and continued, "However, the stalemate in Guandu is exactly what I meant. If this continues, in a few months, Cao Cao will retreat and give up Hunan. At that time, our army will point at Su, and other important places, like a sharp blade against Cao Cao's heart. He will not be able to sleep at night, so how can he not lose? This is the situation of the world. I am here to congratulate the Lord." Tianfeng bowed in the direction of the Guandu camp. Bai Xiaowen was impressed by the loyalty of this old strategist, and his face did not show any signs of depression. Such a loyal talent was punished because of his words. From this, one could see Yuan Shao's weakness in using people. Tiangong's words make sense. Bai Xiaowen agreed, and together with Tianfeng, they wished for Yuan Shao to succeed soon. After the ceremony, Tianfeng stroked his beard and said, "Young master must have something important to do here. What is it that you want to find someone like me who is guilty of something?" Unknowingly, Tianfeng's impression of Yuan Shi had changed. "I didn't realize before that second young master had such foresight. Unfortunately, he is not the eldest son." Tianfeng's thoughts flashed by, but his face did not show any expression. "Here comes the main topic." Bai Xiaowen said seriously, "I am also here for official matters, and I hope that Tianfeng can help." As he said that, he bowed to the ground. Tianfeng had just sat down, and he quickly stood up. "I don't dare to accept your courtesy. Young master, please speak clearly. If it's something within this old man's duty, I will not refuse." Bai Xiaowen sighed. "What I am asking for is not part of your job. Now that Guandu is in a stalemate, it is beneficial for our army. However, with Cao Cao's cunning and the intelligence of Sun Yu, Guojia, and Shi Jizai, how would they be willing to wait for death? Tianfeng, please think carefully. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Shi Jizai died early. However, in the Three Kingdoms of the spiritual world, he was still very healthy. This was not good news." Tianfeng frowned and fell into silence. He walked around the cell twice and said, "I have heard of Yingchuan's talent. Since I can see through such a battle, I am sure that Sun Yu and the others can too." Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "That's right. In my opinion, the Chao army will not be willing to be in a stalemate and will use a surprise tactic. Furthermore, there is something that is hard to say. Tianfeng asked curiously, "What is hard to say?" Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath and said, "Father did not accept Tianfeng's advice of a protracted war. Instead, he wants to end it all in one go. The strategists following him, such as Guotu, Fengji, and the others, are all like that. The stalemate in Guandu is only in accordance with Tianfeng's advice. It is not Father's intention." Looking at Tianfeng's frown, Bai Xiaowen continued, "Father's heart is probably the same as Cao Cao's. He wants to end it quickly. If Father holds such an attitude, he will definitely be taken advantage of by the Chao army." Tianfeng said, "With Zhu Shou following the army, he will definitely advise Master." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "Tianfeng should know Father better than I do. Zhu Shou is stubborn and is not as good as Fengji, Guotu, and the others who are good at understanding and flattering. If he insists on advising, he will inevitably follow in Tianfeng's footsteps." Tianfeng looked at Bai Xiaowen and hesitated. Chapter 1194. Old Mr. Tianfeng probably likes me and wants me to go to the front lines to persuade him. Bai Xiaowen understood Tianfeng's intention and hurriedly added, "I do not cherish my life. If I can convince Father, I will go to the front line of Guandu and risk being punished by Father. If I can ensure victory, I will not hesitate. However, Father does not like me, and even if I go, I will not be of much use." Tianfeng said, "Even so, you should do your part as a minister. Moreover, as a son, you should not avoid misfortune and try to persuade him with your life. If it was someone else who said this, it would definitely make people feel uncomfortable." However, Tianfeng was different. He was a role model who risked his life to persuade others. Bai Xiaowen was prepared and said, "Tiangong is right. I will go to the front lines to persuade Father. However, in this war, I feel that there are other things I can do." Young Master seems to have a plan. Tianfeng stared at Bai Xiaowen. "That's right. My plan is to fight head-to-head." Bai Xiaowen took in a deep breath and said, "The main force of the Chao army is gathered in Guandu, and their rear defenses are empty. If we can choose elite troops and light cavalry to attack Shudu while the two armies are fighting intensely, the matter will be settled. Light cavalry, light armored cavalry. Double the distance, a journey that took 2 days, it was like a rapid march. Shudu was the capital of Cao Cao's power. Emperor Xian of Han Luxia was held hostage here, and it could be said to be Cao Cao's most important place. What needed to be mentioned was that attacking Shudu with light cavalry was a plan that Suyu gave to Yuan Shao in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. However, Yuan Shao did not use it and instead scolded Suyu because of his nephew's actions in Yi City, which led to Suyu joining Cao Cao. Yuan Shao's lack of talent was evident. Bai Xiaowen looked at the map in Yuan Shao's reading room. He had even planned out a possible route to go around Guandu and head straight for Qiao Prefecture in Shudu. Facing a great talent like Tianfeng, it was necessary to make preparations in advance. If Tianfeng asked for the details, Bai Xiaowen would definitely not be able to convince the other party with vague words. Tianfeng frowned and thought about it. He felt that Bai Xiaowen's suggestion was bold, but he instinctively resisted it. Like Sun Yu, Tianfeng was a strategist who was good at seeing the big picture and facing strategies, unlike Suyu and Guojia who were good at using strange tactics. "If we fail, our army will be shaken," Tianfeng said slowly. "Moreover, with Milord's personality, I'm afraid it will be difficult for her to decisively accept Gongzi's suggestion and send troops to attack Sudu Tiangong. Don't worry. This march must be extremely secretive. I don't plan to let my father know about it. I don't even want to use his soldiers," Bai Xiaowen said. "It does make sense to act in secret. Once such a scheme is exposed, we will lose half the battle before it even starts." Tianfeng pondered and said, "But I don't know how Lord will cooperate with you in Guandu." Logically speaking, such a sneak attack on the enemy's rear had to be made known to the commander. In an ideal situation, when Sudu was attacked, Cao Cao would definitely withdraw his troops. Yuan Shao could make arrangements in advance. Whether it was intercepting or chasing, they could achieve good results. Bai Xiaowen smiled bitterly and said, I'm worried that if I report to father, not only will it not succeed, but we will also lose the opportunity to march. Tianfeng was silent. After being imprisoned, he had seen through Yuan Shao's indecisive personality. He did not deny Bai Xiaowen's words. So, my idea is to understand the situation at Guandu through other channels. I will cooperate with father. Bai Xiaowen said slowly. Once the two armies enter a large-scale battle, my cavalry will immediately attack Sudu at that time. I will send someone to inform father. When the ship is built, he will definitely make a decision. Tianfeng sighed and said, using troops should complement each other. If Gongzi's scheme can be combined with my lord's brilliant battle formation, we will definitely be able to defeat Cao Cao. Then, Gongzi, how can I help? Bai Xiaowen thought to himself, Tianfeng is really smart. It is so comfortable to talk to smart people. I have two problems, Bai Xiaowen said slowly. First, if I don't use father's troops, I will need to spend my own money and food. If I don't have money, if I use the Yuzhou treasury's money and food, I will alert the officials sent by father and cause the matter to be leaked. Second, I don't have any generals in the army that I am familiar with, so I don't know anything about the situation at Guandu. For a talent like Tianfeng, once he was convinced, he would do his best to help and would not hesitate. Tianfeng stroked his beard and said, the first thing is not difficult. I will write a letter for Gongzi to send to the Jiulu Tian family. Although the Tian family is not a rich family, we have some wealth. If Gongzi needs it, you can take it all. Bai Xiaowen said anxiously, I don't dare. I will go to the Jin family to meet father-in-law and gather some money and food. How can I let Gongzi Tian destroy your family? Tianfeng waved his hand and said, if the skin does not exist, where will the hair go? If the Lord loses, Cao Cao will invade north and the people of Jizhou will face a calamity. How can the Tian family be spared? In truth, Tianfeng's words were too much. Cao Cao's troops were everywhere. Maybe the people of Jizhou would not be able to escape, but as long as Tianfeng submitted to Cao Cao, the Tian family would be safe. However, the loyal Tianfeng would not consider the possibility of surrendering to Cao Cao. Tianfeng said, as for the second thing, it is even easier. I have a nephew called Tianyu. He knows the art of war and is skilled in archery and horses. He is the Lord's deputy general. Take my letter and head to Guandu to meet him. Ask him to send people to report the news. Gongzi can have the frontline report at any time. Bai Xiaowen was delighted and said, when I succeed, I will not forget Gongzi Tian's help. Tianfeng shook his head and said, if you succeed, please do not mention me in front of the Lord. Bai Xiaowen's eyes squinted. He did not ask why and sighed. He lowered his head and said, my Yuan family has let Gongzi Tian down. I am ashamed. Gongzi Tian, please accept my bow. Tianfeng accepted the bow. In this cell, there were candles, books, and scrolls. Tianfeng picked up his brush and wrote 2 letters. One was for the Jiulu Tian family and the other was for Tianyu, who was in Yuan Shao's army. Gongzi Tian, I do not have the right to release you. When the army wins, I will persuade my father to release Gongzi Tian and treat you well. Tianfeng hummed in agreement, if I win, my power will increase. When the time comes, my lord will definitely pardon me. Gongzi, thank you for your good intentions. A notification from the spiritual world laws appeared. Hero side quest, surprise attack Shudu activated. Quest objective, occupy 50% or more of Shudu, including the Prime Minister's residence and the palace, for 12 hours. Quest difficulty, unable to be evaluated. Quest duration, none, equal to the remaining time you spend in the Three Kingdoms world. Quest reward, unknown. Bai Xiaowen kept the 2 letters as if he had found a treasure. He bade farewell to Tianfeng. When he left, he met the 2 wardens in charge of the prison. Bai Xiaowen scolded, although Gongzi Tian is imprisoned, my father still thinks highly of him. When Gongzi Tian is in prison, he cannot be lacking in his needs. When I come back, if Gongzi Tian loses a single strand of hair, I will hold the two of you responsible. The two wardens nodded their heads. Bai Xiaowen took out 2 silver ingots and comforted them. He then brought Li Shui and Cecilia and left. Chapter 1195. Xiaowen, why did Tianfeng tell me not to mention Yuan Shao's contributions in front of him? Bai Xiaowen said, Tianfeng knows Yuan Shao very well. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, when Yuan Shao lost at Guandu, a jailer told Tianfeng and congratulated him. He thought that Tianfeng had advised Yuan Shao not to fight. Now that Yuan Shao didn't listen and lost, he would use Tianfeng. However, Tianfeng said that when Yuan Shao returned, he would be too ashamed to see me and would kill me. The truth was as Tianfeng expected. If I ambushed Su Du and helped Yuan Shao defeat the Chao army, he would be satisfied and would pardon Tianfeng to show his generosity. If I said that it was because of Tianfeng's help, Yuan Shao would feel as bad as eating a fly. That's why Tianfeng didn't want me to mention him. Li Shui sighed. Do you smart people always speak in riddles like this? How can other people understand? Bai Xiaowen smiled and wisely didn't say anything. He changed the topic and said, it's only midnight now. Let's go to the Jin mansion to see my cheap father-in-law. The Jin family was a rich merchant family in Zhongshan County. They were much richer than the Jiulu Tian family. After marrying General Yuan Shao, the Jin family had a backer and extended their influence into Yi City. They bought shops in the city and land outside the city. Their family business prospered. Bai Xiaowen went to the Jin mansion in Yi City. However, after reporting, Bai Xiaowen didn't see his cheap father-in-law, Jin Yi, but his cheap brother-in-law, Jin Mi's brother, Jin Yan. According to Jin Yan, Jin Yi left the day before yesterday and returned to his hometown in Zhongshan County. Bai Xiaowen was disappointed. However, after talking with Jin Yan, he found that his brother-in-law was calm and well-mannered. He didn't seem like a normal rich man. With regards to the Jin clan, Bai Xiaowen still had a lot of trust. After all, the Jin clan and second young master Yuan had formed a marriage alliance. It could be said that both parties were bound together for good or ill. If Yuan Shao could become the heir, it would be a good thing for the Jin family. However, Yuan Shi was too weak in the past and the Jin family didn't have the ambition to fight for the heir. Things were different now. If Bai Xiaowen could notice Jin Yan's calmness, Jin Yan could also notice the obvious change in his brother-in-law's temperament, charm bonus. Bai Xiaowen gave Jin Mi's letter to Jin Yan and told him his intentions. He even told him that he had obtained the support of the Tian family of Jiulu. Jin Yan didn't think about it for a long time. Maybe Tianfeng was too famous. After seeing the envelope, not the content, of Tianfeng's letter, he said without hesitation, "Father isn't here, so I have full authority over the businesses in Yi City. There are still 50 taels of gold, 1,000 bolts of silk, and 5,000 bushels of corn in the storehouse. I will give them all to brother to help brother secretly recruit soldiers and horses and establish your career." There were 50 coins of gold, and each coin was 24 taels of gold, which was equivalent to 1,200 taels of gold. According to the gold and silver price of the 3 kingdoms of the spirit realm, it was 12,000 strings of coins. There were 1,000 bolts of silk, and each bolt of silk was about 2 strings of coins, which was equivalent to 2,000 strings of coins. The main thing was that in the chaotic era, it couldn't be bought with money. There were 5,000 bushels of corn, and 1 bushel was equivalent to 1 dan. Now that things were expensive, 1 dan of corn was equivalent to 2 or 3 strings of coins. 5,000 bushels of corn was equivalent to at least 10,000 strings of coins. It was also not easy to buy with money. All in all, this brother-in-law was indeed extraordinary. He invested more than 20,000 strings of coins at once. Of course, this investment wasn't a big deal for the Jin family. The Jin family of Hebei was one of the economic pillars of the Yuan Shao group. the amount of money they used to fund the Yuan Shao group was more than 10 times or even 100 times. The 20,000 strings of coins that Jin Yan promised was only a part of the businesses that the Jin family had developed in Yi City in recent years. What made Bai Xiaowen feel especially comfortable was Jin Yan's considerate service. The promised money could be taken away by Bai Xiaowen's carriage. As for the bolts of silk and corn, they could be transported to Yuzhou by the Jin family's caravan and would arrive in a few days. After the agreement, Bai Xiaowen looked at Jin Yan in a different light. First, he married a sister to me and then gave me a large amount of money. This is my Mijou. Of course, Mijou gave Liu Bei much more money. After all, he was the head of the family. Before Jin Yan received the permission of the head of the Jin family, he was already doing his best to give so much money. It showed that he had a strong strategic investment foresight. Jin Yan was generous not only because of Bai Xiaowen's charm, but also because Tianfeng supported Bai Xiaowen. To put it bluntly, he trusted Tianfeng's foresight. Bai Xiaowen said goodbye to Jin Yan and returned to the general's manor. Just as he returned, he bumped into his third brother, Yuan Shang. This kid probably had eyes and ears in the manor. Someone had already reported the news of Bai Xiaowen leaving the manor. Yuan Shang was puzzled. Seeing that his mediocre second brother was so restless, of course, he wanted to give him a warning. Bai Xiaowen was too lazy to argue with him. Anyway, no one from the spiritual realm saw him. He admitted defeat to Yuan Shang verbally, but Li Shi was furious. Look at how arrogant and domineering Yuan Laosan is. I really want to chop him up. Bai Xiaowen shook his head with a smile. What's the point of arguing with such a shallow person? Even if I admit defeat verbally, I won't lose anything. It's enough if he doesn't make trouble for me. After a busy night, the next morning, Qiao Rui and Han Su led the rest of the cavalry and escorted the military supplies to Yi City. Bai Xiaowen went to see Madame Lu again. He presented the gifts and said that he would return to Yuzhou. Madame Lu thought that the situation in Yuzhou was unstable, so she didn't ask him to stay. Yuan Shang and Yuan Tan were relieved when they saw that Bai Xiaowen didn't have the slightest intention of fighting for favor in front of their mother. Especially Yuan Shang. He thought that the warning was effective and was secretly proud. Bai Xiaowen left the general's mansion and briefly explained the current situation. You've already obtained Tianfeng's support and more than 20,000 strings of cash from the Jin family? Qiao Rui's eyes widened. It hadn't been long since they entered the military, but Bai Xiaowen had already opened up the situation. It could be said that with the 20,000 strings of cash, the combat strength required by the main mission could be easily achieved. There was even a surplus. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, it's mainly because of Yuan Shi's identity and status. Without this identity, it would be impossible to get so many resources in one day just by relying on the body of an awakened. Although that's true, it's not something that can be obtained with identity. The captain's personal ability is extremely important. Qiao Rui praised. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, now let's start assigning tasks. This time, we have to act separately. I'm going to take Cecilia back to Yuzhou to raise an army. Shi, you go to Guandu and take Tianfeng's letter to Tianyu to open up an intelligence channel in Guandu. Old Han, take another letter to the Jiulu Tian family and ask for another sum of money to transport to Yuzhou. What about me? Qiao Rui tilted her head and looked at Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, Sister Qiao, your task is the most important. You have to stay in Yi City. This is the center of Jizhou. You have to screen the information sent from Guandu's front line. Pick out the valuable ones and send them to Yuzhou as soon as possible so that I can know. In addition, you are responsible for finding the best marching route in Jizhou so that our Yuzhou cavalry can bypass Guandu's front line and go straight to Shudu. Chapter 1196. The 100 cavalrymen who followed Bai Xiaowen to Jizhou were part of the Yuzhou army and Yuan Shao's subordinates. Bai Xiaowen couldn't trust Qiao Rui with these people because they were Yuan Shao's subordinates. delivering intelligence was a highly confidential job, so Bai Xiaowen couldn't let them do it. Therefore, he brought them back to Yuzhou as they were. The intelligence from Guandu frontline to Yi City and Jizhou was delivered by Tian Yu's bodyguards. The intelligence from Yi City and Jizhou to Yuzhou was delivered through the Jin family's secret channel to keep it a secret. Qiao Rui was hiding in the Jin family. Bai Xiaowen also needed her wisdom and decisiveness to be in charge of this important central intelligence station in Yi City. After making all these arrangements, Bai Xiaowen went to see Jinmi and left Xiaohong, the servant girl who slept with Jinmi. Jinmi didn't ask Bai Xiaowen about the details of last night. She just held Bai Xiaowen's hand and said, "I'm in Yi City. I wish my husband a great success in Yuzhou." Bai Xiaowen wanted to take Jinmi with him, but she stayed in the Yuan mansion in Yi City to take care of Madame Lu. This was a kind of filial piety that deserved praise. Bai Xiaowen couldn't force it. He didn't have the capital to be willful now. Bai Xiaowen could only hold Jinmi's hand and say, "My dear wife, please wait patiently. It will take half a month to a month. I'll definitely make some achievements and then come to reunite with you." Bai Xiaowen and Cecilia returned with 50 taels of gold. Although the gold was heavy, it didn't take up much of the weight of the horses in Bai Xiaowen's storage space. Of course, the cloth and army rations couldn't be transported through the storage space. Cecilia summoned the divine steed Bai Yujing. The two rode on the same horse and rushed back to Yuzhou. The 100 cavalrymen couldn't keep up with Bai Yujing's speed and could only walk slowly behind. Bai Yujing's speed wasn't just for show. When it galloped, the trees on both sides became reflections as it sped past. Its speed was probably more than 150 kilometers per hour. This was Bai Yujing's normal running speed. If it sprinted, it would be even faster. Don't compare it to the speed of a modern car on the highway. What was Bai Yujing's road like? Not only was it bumpy, but there was also snow and ice and snow all year long. Yujing's speed was really amazing. And there were very few bumps. It only took them half a day's journey back to Beiping. Once they arrived, they of the spiritual sect, spiritual energy of the spiritual sect S's. This wasn't the time to be stingy with mana points. Bai Xiaowen used insight on them one by one. Insight into these people was not to consider what would happen if they became enemies, but to understand the size of a person's basic ability, so as to avoid missing out on talents. And, in S. However, the result of the spiritual insight was not satisfactory. There were 5 leaders of the spiritual sect's civil officials and generals. Among them, Lu He, Zhao Rong, Jiao Tan, Zhang Nan, and Yen Rou were generals. The rest of them were mediocre and not worth mentioning. But of the 5 leaders, Zhao Rong, Jiao Tan, and Zhang Nan were all Yuan Shao's subordinates. They were sent to help Bai Xiaowen manage the spiritual sect's military affairs. They would only listen to Yuan Shao. If Bai Xiaowen wanted to use the treasury's money or a large number of troops, the 3 of them had to see Yuan Shao's order before taking action. Only Lu He and Yen Rou were former subordinates of the former spiritual sects. They were not Yuan Shao's confidants. However, the 2 of them did not have much interaction with Yuan Shi. They were still on guard. Unlike Tianfeng and Jinyan, it was not easy to win their loyalty. Bai Xiaowen asked them to report the situation. He had a basic understanding of the spiritual sect's military affairs. Currently, most of the spiritual sect's troops had been transferred away. The 2 generals, Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan, still had 20,000 men under them. Yen Rou had 5,000 men under her. It would be an exaggeration to say that these 20,000 men were old, weak, sick, and disabled. However, they were definitely not elite troops. The real elites were basically at the front line of Guandu. Most of the money and food this season had been transported to the spiritual sect's headquarters. The money left in the spiritual sect's treasury was only enough for the sect's normal operations. I still have to rely on myself. Bai Xiaowen sighed in his heart. After a short meeting, he left the mansion without stopping and brought Cecilia to inspect the various military facilities in Beiping City. Bai Xiaowen's focus was on Beiping City's military weapons workshop. How is the military equipment here compared to the Cane realm? Bai Xiaowen asked Cecilia through the team channel. The method of forging steel is a bit ancient, but the effect is unexpectedly good, Cecilia said after observing for a while. The armor made from this tempered steel is very strong and light. Although the iron bow is a bit heavy, with the quality of the soldiers here, there should be no need to worry about the equipment. In terms of attack power, it is stronger than the composite bow. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, the military equipment in the spiritual realm is not stronger the closer it is to modern technology. It is related to the concentration of psionic particles. The military equipment in the Three Kingdoms realm is definitely stronger than the ones in the Cane realm. However, this kind of tempered steel is more precious. It is usually used to forge treasured swords and sabers. It cannot be used on a large scale. Currently, the armor worn by the elite cavalry is made from this kind of tempered steel. Cecilia looked at the sample of tempered steel. She knocked on it and listened. Then, she said, tempered steel is not bad. If it is used to forge winged cavalry, it is barely enough. Then, what about this tempered steel? Another steel armor was handed over. This kind of steel was used to make the armor of the lieutenants and lieutenants. Very good. Although it is not as good as tempered steel, it is better than the light steel in the Cane realm. It is more than enough to forge winged cavalry. Cecilia gave a definite answer. The two then went to inspect the stables. Yuzhou was indeed a place of good horses. The war horses were tall and strong. They were much stronger than the horses in the south. Cecilia was very satisfied with one look. Dior, with the special steel, iron bow, and excellent war horses, there should be enough resources to forge winged cavalry. Now, I need soldiers. It is best if they are veterans who have been on the battlefield. That way, I can train them in a week. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, this is easy. My position as the provincial governor of Yuzhou seems to be an empty title. It is more or less useful. Bai Xiaowen immediately summoned Yan Rou and ordered him to bring all 5,000 men to the drill ground for inspection. Yan Rou was not Yuan Shao's confidant, so he did not dare to question him. After the 5,000 men were lined up, Bai Xiaowen brought Cecilia to select soldiers. Cecilia was quite good at selecting soldiers. She could always pick out the better soldiers from the uneven number of soldiers. Bai Xiaowen opened a few insight and was secretly amazed. Chapter 1197. At first, Yan Rou just watched as Cecilia selected the soldiers. After selecting 10, Yan Rou thought, does the provincial governor want to train some personal guards? That was good. After selecting 30, Yan Rou thought, the number of guards is a bit too much. After selecting 50, Yan Rou thought, 50, no more. Those who were selected were all veterans with great potential. He couldn't bear it. Cecilia didn't stop. She selected more than 70 soldiers from the first 3 rows and then went to the 4th row. Yan Rou took a deep breath. I'll bear it. After Cecilia selected 100 soldiers, Yan Rou finally couldn't bear it anymore. Provincial governor, what's the meaning of this? Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, when I came back from Jizhou, I received an order from my third brother to select soldiers from the Yuzhou army and train them into elite soldiers to support the battle in Guandu. General Yan, don't have any opinions about my father's orders. Yan Rou was terrified when he heard this. I don't dare. He wasn't Yuan Shao's confidant, so he naturally wouldn't complain to him. After all, Bai Xiaowen was Yuan Shao's son. Even though he was held back by the civil and military officials under his command, if he really wanted to put aside his pride and do something, he could still achieve great things. As a hunter, Bai Xiaowen's bottom line was obviously much lower than the previous second young master Yuan, and his face was much thicker. Cecilia's selection speed was getting faster and faster. In the end, she selected 600 soldiers from the 5,000 soldiers. Yen Rou said with a bitter face, "Provincial governor, the 5,000 soldiers under my command are registered. Now that 600 people are missing, it's hard to explain when there's a review in the future." "General Yen, don't worry. I'll allow you to recruit new soldiers in the countryside of Yuzhou to make up for the 600 empty soldiers. All of this is to defeat traitor Chao. I won't forget General Yan's contribution." Bai Xiaowen was in a good mood. Yen Rou sighed. During the last conscription, about 70 to 80% of the elite soldiers under his command had been taken away. Now, the second young master of the Yuan family had sent this female general, who had sharp eyes, to take away 600 strong soldiers. Now, the 4,000 soldiers under his command were basically like dogs with broken backs. Their combat power plummeted. No matter how diligent he was in recruiting soldiers, he couldn't catch up with these fierce veterans who had been on the battlefield. However, the second young master Yuan promised to make up for the gap, so he didn't go too far. Yen Rou took the opportunity to ask for money and rations. "Provincial governor, it's fine to recruit soldiers, but you have to give them some money to settle down. Also, for the new soldiers, military equipment and rations have to be prepared. This is not a small expense. Would Darren please give this general an official document so that I can ask Zhao Rong?" "Darren? No need. How much do you need to recruit soldiers? I'll give it to you. There's no need to look for Zhao Rong." If Yen Rou went to find Zhao Rong, he would definitely be suspicious because he had never heard of Yuan Shao's order to recruit more soldiers. Furthermore, Yuan Shao's orders were required to withdraw the money and provisions. If Zhao Rong went to ask Yuan Shao for instructions, the plan would be exposed and Bai Xiaowen's surprise attack mission would be ruined. Bai Xiaowen knew that he could not avoid this sum of money. The rules of the Spiriters' realm would not allow him to poach from the Yuzhou army so recklessly without accomplishing anything. Poaching a group of veterans and spending money to recruit new soldiers for Yen Rou was the biggest benefit of Yuan Shi's identity. Bai Xiaowen gave Yen Rou 10 taels of gold, about 2,400 strings of cash, for the new soldiers. He finally appeased this old subordinate of Lu Yu. But it was all worth it. The winged cavalry was one of the strongest soldiers in the Kane realm. In the Three Kingdoms realm, they should be considered elite soldiers. At the very least, they wouldn't lose to Tao Qian's Danyang soldiers or Big Ear Lu's White Nightmare soldiers. Bai Xiaowen continued to write orders for the armory and the stables to provide a batch of warhorses as soon as possible. Of course, this wasn't free. Bai Xiaowen had to pay for all the money he needed. Again, he couldn't use the money stored in the Yuzhou treasury. Otherwise, Zhao Rong would ask for Yuan Shao's permission. The only good thing was that the armory and the stables wouldn't make a profit from the provincial governor. They would provide the warhorses at close to cost. "Cecilia, calculate how much it will cost to train a winged cavalry soldier," Bai Xiaowen asked. Cecilia said, "A set of armor made of 50 refined steel will cost 30 strings of cash. I hope that the spears, sabers, and arrowheads can be made of 100 refined steel. It will also cost 30 strings of cash. A warhorse will cost 10 strings of cash. Plus 3 months' worth of food and the horse's food, it will cost 10 strings of cash. That's 80 strings of cash. That's expensive." Bai Xiaowen was mentally prepared, but he was still shocked when he heard the number. The 20,000 strings of cash he got from his brother-in-law was only enough to train 300 winged cavalry soldiers. Cecilia frowned and said, "A winged cavalry soldier armed like this will definitely be a top-notch elite. Although I don't know how powerful the ferocious cavalry is, Dior, I believe that my winged cavalry soldiers won't lose to any of the elite soldiers from the Three Kingdoms." After pausing for a moment, Cecilia reached out and smoothed out Bai Xiaowen's worried expression. "Dior, if there's no other way, I can lower the budget. The armor will cost 30 refined steel, the spears and sabers will cost 50 refined steel. This way, we can save about 20 to 30 strings of cash for each winged cavalry soldier." "No, we must use the best weapons and equipment to train a truly elite soldier. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, for a surprise attack on Sudu, quality is more important than quantity. We'll train 300 winged cavalry soldiers for now. When Old Han sends the money from the Tian family over, we should be able to train another batch. In short, I'll think of a solution for the money. Since he chose 600 veterans, Bai Xiaowen thought that he could train at least 600 winged cavalry soldiers. A group of 600 elite soldiers was already an elite force that couldn't be underestimated in the Three Kingdoms era. It must be known that it was easy to recruit soldiers, but hard to train them. The cost of maintaining an elite soldier was even greater. In the Three Kingdoms, there was no power that could maintain such a large number of elite soldiers. According to the information that Bai Xiaowen looked up, Gongsun Zan's White Horse Cavalry had a total of 3,000 soldiers, while Gao Shun's Formation Breaker, Heavy Infantry, only had 700 soldiers. Bai Xiaowen didn't need to spend the long-term cost of training an army. He himself couldn't stay in the Three Kingdoms for more than a year, so 3 months of food was more than enough. This was an advantage that couldn't be considered an advantage. In Beiping City, Bai Xiaowen oversaw for a day. Cecilia's training was also on track. Although Zhao Rong, Jiao Tan, and the other subordinates of Yuan Shao saw General Bai Sanyan, Cecilia, training new soldiers, they naturally didn't meddle in other people's business. First of all, the number of soldiers was small, and second of all, they didn't use Youzhou's money in soldiers. Bai Xiaowen, however, wasn't someone who could stay idle. After the training was on track, he immediately summoned Yan Rou. Eye of Evolution, Eye of Evolution. Chapter 1198. The provincial governor has summoned me. May I know what is the matter? Yan Rou was a bit afraid to see Bai Xiaowen now. General Yan, you've been in Yuzhou for many years and should know the local situation. How's the situation in Liaodong? Bai Xiaowen asked. Yan Rou couldn't figure out Bai Xiaowen's intentions, so she answered honestly. My lord, Liaodong has 4 prefectures, Liaodong, Yuelang, Daifang, and Xuanke. These 4 prefectures are all occupied by Gongsun Du. After the great general defeated Gongsun Zan, Gongsun Du sent an envoy to congratulate the great general. Bai Xiaowen nodded and asked, Gongsun Du and Gongsun Zan have the same surname. Is there any connection between the two? Yan Rou shook her head and said, Gongsun Zan was in Liaoxi and Gongsun Du occupied Liaodong. There's no connection. Bai Xiaowen nodded. He knew that Gongsun Du's family had been in Liaodong for 3 generations. It wasn't until Gongsun Yuan established himself as the king of Yan and betrayed Chao Wei that they were defeated by Sima Yi's army. Now was the beginning of the era of feudal states. Gongsun Du had only occupied the 4 prefectures of Liaodong for a short time and didn't have a deep foundation. Yuan Shao was a person who liked grandiose achievements. Gongsun Du's envoy submitting made him very satisfied. In addition, Liaodong was remote and cold. Even if he occupied it, there wasn't much to gain. Thus, he didn't continue the East expedition and tacitly accepted the fact that Gongsun Du occupied Liaodong. Of course, another important reason was that he didn't have time. At this moment, Yuan Shao controlled 4 prefectures. Even his headquarters in Jizhou had the powerful Yellow Turban Army, the Black Mountain Bandits. Zhang Yan hadn't pacified them yet, so he didn't have time to care about Liaodong. Provincial governor, why are you suddenly asking about Liaodong? Yan Rou asked carefully. Bai Xiaowen sighed and said, yesterday, I went to Jizhou to visit my relatives. Third brother Xianfu brought a secret report. The Chao army sent an envoy to Xiangping to collude with Gongsun Du and attack our rear. Really? Yan Rou was shocked. In fact, no. However, Bai Xiaowen made up the lie based on the situation. While the Yuan and Chao families were locked in a stalemate at Guandu, the Chao army sent people to fan the flames in the Yuan family's backyard. It was reasonable and credible. Furthermore, with Yan Rou's status, it was impossible for her to question Bai Xiaowen. Yan Rou quickly calmed down and said, since the Grand General sent third young master to deliver the secret message, he must have a countermeasure. What do you think? Bai Xiaowen said, Father allowed me to act at my own discretion. General Yan, I plan to make a trip to Xiangping city of Liaodong Commandery to meet with Gongsun Du and his son and find out their true attitude. This is too dangerous. The provincial governor's body is priceless. How could he take the risk alone? For this kind of thing, sending a civil official as a messenger to Xiangping would suffice. Yan Rou said in surprise. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. If we send someone else, I won't feel at ease until I see it with my own eyes. General Yan, I have made up my mind to go to Xiangping. Yan Rou said helplessly, since that's the case, you need to bring more troops to prevent any accidents. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand. If I bring an army over, Gongsun Du and his son will be terrified. How would they meet me? I only need 500 elite troops, but I need a prestigious general to accompany me. As he said this, Bai Xiaowen looked at Yan Rou. Yan Rou lowered her head and played dumb. Bai Xiaowen coughed and could only name a general. General Yan, you have been in the Yuzhou army for many years and have a high reputation. I think you're the only one who can accompany me to Xiangping. Yan Rou's face turned black. Provincial governor, why don't you send Jiao and Zhang? Bai Xiaowen thought that the two of them were weak and were under Yuan Zhao's command. If they were moved, they would be exposed. However, this was not a good reason to say. What, I am the son of the Grand General and the provincial governor of Yuzhou. Even I dare to take the risk, but General Yan doesn't dare to go? As the saying went, inviting a general was better than provoking a general. Most of the generals of the Three Kingdoms era fell for this. Yan Rou thought about it more. At this point, if she did not go, she would be going against a military order and her life would be in danger. It would be better to go to Xiangping with Yuan Shi. Judging from Yuan Shi's calm expression, he definitely wouldn't joke about his own life, right? Although Cecilia had picked out 600 strong soldiers, Yan Rou still had more than 4,000 men under her command. Picking out another 500 strong soldiers would not be a problem. Bai Xiaowen did not tell Zhao Rong and the others. He left Cecilia to train the winged cavalry while he took Yan Rou and the 500 elite soldiers to Xiangping City in Liaodong Prefecture. The second young master of the Yuan family brought troops to Xiangping City. Gongsun Du shivered and asked the soldier who came to report, how many troops did he bring? My lord, only 4 or 500. Gongsun Du heaved a sigh of relief. Open the city gates and invite them in. Gongsun Kang said, Father, Liaodong and the Yuan family have never interfered with each other. Yuan Shi has been in office for more than a year and has only sent messengers. He has never come in person. This time, he came in person and brought troops. Could it be that he is plotting against our prefecture? We have to be careful. Gongsun Du said, if he is here to attack Xiangping, why would he only bring a few hundred soldiers? These few hundred are just Yuan Shi's personal guards. It is not surprising. Chapter 1199. A civil official from Xiangping City came to welcome him and expressed Gongsun Du's intentions. Provincial Governor, Gongsun Du and his son want you to go to the banquet alone without any soldiers. This is too dangerous, Yan Rou said softly. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, I'm the provincial governor of Yuzhou. Liaodong is also under Yuzhou's rule. Even if I'm alone, where can I not go? He then looked at the civil official and said, is it okay if I bring a follower? The civil official hurriedly said, of course. During the Three Kingdoms era, even if someone of status went to a banquet alone, they would bring a few followers with them. For example, when Guan Yu went to Dong Yuwu's banquet at Hongmen, he brought Zhou Tsang with him. Later generations still praised him for going to the banquet alone. Yan Rou originally thought that Bai Xiaowen was going to call him, but Bai Xiaowen didn't look at him. Instead, he pointed at the black-robed woman behind him and said, you come with me. The black-robed woman agreed and lifted the hood on her head. The surrounding crowd gasped. This woman's hair and eyes were very strange. She didn't look like someone from the Central Plains. Provincial governor, this is. Yen Ro was puzzled. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, this is the Japanese Raven Girl. She was subdued by a Taoist master and is now my personal guard. With her around, I'll be safe. This black-robed woman was Delifa. She was summoned by Bai Xiaowen in advance and had been following the army. Bai Xiaowen summoned Delifa for a reason. Bai Xiaowen's identity was Yuan Qi, the second son of the Yuan family. He wasn't a nobody. Therefore, if Bai Xiaowen wanted to be useful in the upcoming battle, he had to reveal his strength. If he was a nobody, he could ask a mutant to teach him his summoning skills. However, as the second son of the Yuan family, he couldn't be fooled like this. To put it bluntly, Yuan Qi was surrounded by many servants and attendants when she was still in diapers. Wherever she went, there would be people following her. How could she have the opportunity to be taught special techniques by a dissimulated person? If Bai Xiaowen did not hesitate to use this method, it was possible that the Yuan family would have doubts because of the strangeness of the summoning technique. This question was not because they suspected that Bai Xiaowen had been replaced by someone from another world, because the natives of the Three Kingdoms basically did not know anything about this world, except for a few people. At most, they wondered when the second young master had met a Taoist master and learned this skill. It was better to be cautious. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen summoned Delifa in advance and asked Delifa, the Japanese Raven Girl, to complete all the summoning spells, at least in the early stages. After the natives of the Three Kingdoms got used to it, Bai Xiaowen could show other combat techniques such as the Cold Winter Wand, the Talisman, the Kusanagi sect martial arts, and so on. Then, he could pretend that he was taught by a Taoist master who had subdued the Japanese Raven Girl. Before leaving, Bai Xiaowen looked at Yen Ro and said with a smile, General Yen, don't forget about our agreement. Yen Ro's scalp went numb, but at this time, he could only cup his hands and say, I won't disappoint the provincial governor. Xiangping City, Marquis of Liaodong's residence. Gongsun Du held a banquet to entertain the second son of the Yuan family. Gongsun Du sat in the main seat while Bai Xiaowen sat in the guest seat. He first used insight to skin Gongsun Du. Gongsun Du was a strength-type general, but he wasn't very strong. As a level 9 leader, his strength was only 75 points. However, it was worth mentioning that Gongsun Du had a special passive skill, Liao Dong Master, which gave him an extra 400 HP. In addition, the high-level leader's general skills were also level 3, and it gave Gongsun Du an extra 500 HP, together with his original 600 HP. Gongsun Du's total HP reached 1,500. He was not much weaker than the average strength-type leader. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. Could this be a special skill that all the leaders of the factions in the later stages of the Three Kingdoms had, increasing extra HP? He didn't see such a skill on Yen Ro and the other generals. Although Gongsun Du had submitted to Yuan Shao, he was still a warlord. The 4 counties of Liaodong were his backyard. However, he only had 400 more HP than expected. It didn't affect Bai Xiaowen's plan. The guests and the host exchanged some pleasantries before the dishes were served. There was singing and dancing to liven things up. During the meal, Gongsun Du asked, Young master, why are you here? Bai Xiaowen didn't drink and said calmly, I'm here for the 4 counties of Liaodong. Gongsun Du's face changed slightly. He frowned and said, I don't understand what young master Bai means. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, the 4 counties of Liaodong are also under Yuzhou. Why haven't you handed over a single grain in the past 2 years? You're the governor of Liaodong, aren't you a bit incompetent? Gongsun Du was shocked and angry. He didn't expect Bai Xiaowen to directly ask for the grain without hinting. Moreover, from his words, he didn't show any respect to the self-proclaimed Marquis of Liaodong. In his anger, Gongsun Du said, Young Master Yuan, you're wrong. The 4 counties of Liaodong are my foundation. It has nothing to do with the general. If young master wants to swallow the 4 counties of Liaodong, it depends on whether you have such a good appetite. With a clang, Gong Sun Du angrily threw the wine cup in his hand to the ground. Throwing the cup as a signal? Bai Xiaowen smiled and shook his head. This method was a bit old. With a burst of shouting, 300 axemen rushed out from behind the tent. Gong Sun Du ordered, "Capture Yuan Shi alive." Although he was shocked and angry, he still had some rationality in his heart. Bai Xiaowen coughed softly, and suddenly a strong pressure spread out. Of the 300 axemen, only a dozen were elites. The rest were ordinary models. How could they withstand the pressure of deterrence? They fell to the ground in disorder, and most of them were unconscious. Even Gong Sun Du was affected by the effect of deterrence, and his body stiffened. Delifa suddenly took off his black robe and raised his hand. In fact, Bai Xiaowen used Return of the Dead to summon an army of creatures. Horses neighed, and the Death Knight led 3 Terror Knights to charge, and their target was Gong Sun Du. 10 undead archers followed and fired a round of volley. The moment before the volley hit, the butcher fell from the sky and landed behind Gong Sun Du, blocking his way. With a buzz, poison gas was activated and reduced Gong Sun Du's resistance. A string of arrows rained down, and Gong Sun Du's HP dropped by 200 points. He invited Yuan Shi to a banquet, but he didn't wear any armor or ride a warhorse. This round of volley and the butcher's poison also woke Gong Sun Du from his paralyzed fear state. But before he could do anything, the Death Knight's charge hit him. A lance pierced through him, and at the same time, 3 great swords were swung at him. After being repelled by the charge and being controlled for another round, the undead archers followed up with a second volley. He had lost 600 HP from the start of the fight. In a hurry, Gong Sun Du could only draw his sword from his waist and slash. His heart was filled with fear, and he shouted loudly, "Men! Men!" Chapter 1200. Shouts could be heard from afar. Bai Xiaowen's mental skin covered the Marquis's mansion. He could feel a large number of enemies moving through the corridors towards the main hall. "Let's end this quickly." Bai Xiaowen controlled Delifa to wave again, at the same time summoning kits, skeleton warriors, and other melee creatures to block Gong Sun Du's left and right sides. Gong Sun Du thought that Bai Xiaowen, a weak scholar, who only brought a female follower to the banquet, would not be a threat to him. Not to mention, he had 300 axemen with him. He was wrong. Although Bai Xiaowen was only one person, he could form an army of his own. He was more of a threat than those brave generals. And the 300 axemen had no commander, and they were completely restrained by Bai Xiaowen's deterrence, mental force field. As the leader of the 3 kingdoms, Gong Sun Du had 1,500 HP, which was almost comparable to the lords of other planes. But being surrounded and isolated, he still couldn't hold on. After 4 rounds of attacks from the necromancer archers, he was covered in blood, and his HP fell below 1/3. Boom! The main hall's door was knocked open, and a young master came in with a group of armored soldiers. Among the armored soldiers, there were 2 generals in full armor, with long tassels on their heads. Their auras were extraordinary. Bai Xiaowen scanned them with insight. One of them was Yang Yi, and the other was Lu Yi. They were both level 8 commanders, but their stats were mediocre. They could barely be considered commanders. The young master, on the other hand, wielded a sword in soft armor. He was quite strong. His name was Gong Sun Kang, and he was Gong Sun Du's son. He was already a level 9 commander. In this small Xiangping city, 4 commanders had popped out. It was conceivable that Gong Sun Du had at least a dozen commanders under his command. No wonder the awakened ones of the 3 kingdoms changed their expressions. This was indeed difficult. Gong Sun Du was already one of the weaker ones among the warlords, yet he still had this kind of strength. Only a powerful team like the White Phoenix team could move unhindered in the 3 kingdoms. This was also because the Gong Sun clan had yet to prosper, and Gong Sun Du was only the founder of the clan. Decades later, with the efforts of Gong Sun Kang, Gong Sun Gong, Gong Sun Yuan, and several other generations, Liaodong would become an iron bucket. Bai Xiaowen would definitely not dare to go to the meeting alone and take the risk of capturing the enemy's chieftain and seizing the city. Bai Xiaowen stealthily manipulated Delifa's hands to make a pulling motion. Immediately, the butcher abandoned Gong Sun Du, who only had a sliver of health left, and strode towards the main hall, blocking the main hall's entrance. Like a purple-black swamp, Gong Sun Kang's reinforcements were unable to help Gong Sun Du. On Gong Sun Du's side, although there was no butcher blocking the way, Bai Xiaowen would definitely not relax. He immediately summoned the Wrath Claw. With a long howl, all the summoned creatures were buffed. Wrath Claw pounced on Gong Sun Du. The Wrath Claw's powerful attack was finally able to take Gong Sun Du's damage. His HP was completely depleted, and he collapsed to the ground. "Father!" Gong Sun Kang was furious. A notification from the spiritual realm appeared. Gong Sun Kang has entered the Blood Vengeance state. Attack power increased by 30%, attack speed increased by 50%, and hit rate decreased by 25%. That is, attacking a stationary target has a 25% chance of missing. However, with the butcher's huge body, it would be difficult for Gong Sun Kang to miss. This Blood Vengeance state had no negative effects at all. Gong Sun Kang's stats were not weak, and his skills were quite useful. However, Bai Xiaowen would not give him the chance to show off. Evil Lady released an illusion in advance. Gong Sun Kang, who was like a mad tiger, turned sideways and slashed at Louis, who was on the same side as him. Louis was caught off guard, and a bloody wound appeared on his body. He said in horror, "Young master, Evil Lady's illusion disappeared in a flash." Gong Sun Kang was confused when he saw that he was attacking the butcher, but he was attacking Louis instead. Bai Xiaowen threw out a bewitching talisman. Gong Sun Kang screamed and was stunned. Taking advantage of this opportunity where Gong Sun Kang was unable to block, the skeletal archers fired all 10 arrows at once. Bai Xiaowen also took out his Desert Eagle, which turned into a rapid-fire crossbow by default, activated rapid fire, and attacked Gong Sun Kang like crazy. Bai Xiaowen timed Gong Sun Kang's resistance to leader toughness. At the last second, he controlled the Wrath Claw to use Beast Instinct. The Wrath Claw lowered its body and pounced at Gong Sun Kang from dozens of meters away. It pressed Gong Sun Kang under its claws and tore at him. Gong Sun Kang's soft armor was torn apart, and blood flowed out continuously. During this period of suppression, the undead bone archers continued to shoot, and the other long-range attackers continued to deal damage. As for Yang Yi and Louis, they were blocked by the Death Knight and other melee summon creatures. They could not get close at all. As for the other reinforcements, the main hall's door was limited, and the butcher blocked the entrance, so they could not rush in. Although Gong Sun Kang's attributes were good, he was not the leader of a faction, nor was he a famous general. His total health did not exceed 1,000 points. During the period of suppression by the bewitching talisman, Bai Xiaowen cooperated with the summoned creatures and directly killed him. Just as Gong Sun Kang lifted the Wrath Claw and tried to get up, Bai Xiaowen's bullet hit his head. It was the fourth bullet, which triggered the penetration effect and killed him. In less than 2 minutes, the Gong Sun father and son were dead. Bai Xiaowen shouted, "I am Yozhou's provincial governor, Yuan Shi." The Gong Sun father and son were disobedient and did not respect the law. They have been executed. I pardon your crimes, and those who surrender will be rewarded. Do not make a mistake. If you resist the imperial court, it will be too late for the Jizhou army to regret. Yang Yi shouted angrily, "Hey! Yuan Shi's son killed my lord. I will not live under the same sky as you." Louis, on the other hand, was alarmed. Looking at the fallen executioners, he thought to himself, Yuan Shi was able to subdue 300 soldiers and kill Gong Sun Du alone. His martial prowess is close to that of a supernatural being. He also has the Hebei Yuan family behind him. Even if I kill him, the Yuan family's army will take revenge. What's the point? Thinking of this, Louis couldn't help but loosen his grip. He covered the wound caused by Gong Sun Kang and retreated to the side. Yang Yi was fighting alone, but unexpectedly, there were sounds of killing coming from outside the courtyard. An eagle feather arrow whizzed over and hit Yang Yi's shoulder. "I am General Yen Rou, and I am under orders to take over the defense of Xiangping. Surrender now, and don't make a mistake." Yen Rou and Gong Sun Kang set out at the same time, but Gong Sun Kang was closer, so he arrived first. Yen Rou was further away and only just arrived. Yen Rou's eyesight was good. When he saw that Bai Xiaowen was safe and sound, he was relieved. Along the way, he was quite worried. Was this second young master, who said that he would go alone, just bragging? If he fell out with the Gongsun father and son, it would be difficult to explain to Yuan Shao whether he was captured or killed. I have evolution. Chapter 1201. When Bai Xiaowen was free, he ordered kits to chop off the heads of Gongsun Du and Gongsun Kang. Delifa's spiritual spear pierced through the air and displayed the two heads. When Yen Rou saw this, she was shocked. So the second young master came prepared. Not only did he not die, he even killed the Gongsun father and son. Although she was shocked, Yen Rou's reaction wasn't slow. She immediately ordered her soldiers to spread the news of the Gongsun father and son's death. The shout spread from the main hall to the marquee mansion and then into the city. The city was bustling. Gongsun Du's subordinates didn't have the heart to fight and were in a daze. Bai Xiaowen quickly dealt with the battle at the entrance of the main hall. Yen Rou led 500 soldiers and took down Yang Yi, who was still stubbornly resisting. At the same time, a few of Yang Yi's personal guards were also killed. After Bai Xiaowen took over the marquee mansion, he immediately ordered Yen Rou to put out a notice to pacify the people. His intention was, he killed the Gongsun father and son and only took out the main culprit. The officials of Xiangping City were to immediately come to the marquee mansion to pay their respects to the provincial governor. All of their positions were to be kept. Those who came first would be rewarded. In fact, before the notice was posted, there were already some courageous officials who came to pay their respects to the second young master. Bai Xiaowen sat on the main seat of Gongsun Du in the main hall of the marquee mansion. He comforted the officials who came to show their loyalty. After seeing Bai Xiaowen, the officials of Xiangping City couldn't help but praise him. The second young master of the Yuan family was truly a dragon among men. With such a son, people looked forward to what kind of person the great general was. Following such a lord would have a much brighter future than following Gongsun Du. In fact, this was the effect of Bai Xiaowen's high charm. One had to know that he was always equipped with the emperor's crown. Moreover, the charm of Jinmi's flowing goblet dance would last for 72 hours. The Gongsun father and son weren't very popular. They didn't have the charisma of Cao Cao or the noble background of Yuan Shao. They weren't the ideal lords in the eyes of knowledgeable people. Even decades later, after 3 generations of the Gongsun family had worked hard in Liaodong, they still hadn't been recognized by the Liaodong family. For example, Guan Ning, Feng Yuan, and the other famous people had declined the recruitment of the Gongsun family many times, which infuriated Gongsun Kang, Gongsun Yuan, and the other leaders, but there was nothing they could do. In just half a day, all the officials of Xiangping City had gathered in front of the hall. Bai Xiaowen ordered his men to do a head count. Only Chief Scribe Wang Wai was missing. Bai Xiaowen ordered his men to search for Wang Wai. The new general, Liu Yi, volunteered to go. He was familiar with the place and soon brought Wang Wai over. Bai Xiaowen sat in the main hall and asked, "I am the governor of Yu province. I have come to Xiangping City to eradicate evil and bring order to the chaos. Now that Xiangping has been settled, why hasn't Elder Wang come to pay his respects? Could it be that he harbors resentment?" Wang Wai bowed and said, "Governor, the Gongsun father and son ruled over a region and didn't respect the laws of the general. They were courting death. However, I have received the kindness of the Gongsun father and son. My heart is grieving, so I didn't come to congratulate you earlier. I know that I have sinned, but please allow me to collect the Gongsun father and son's remains. Even if I die, I will have no regrets." When Bai Xiaowen heard this, he straightened his body and said, "The Gongsun father and son are loyal and righteous. What sin have you committed?" He then promised Wang Lai to collect the Gongsun father and son's remains and personally went down to recruit Wang Lai. Wang Lai was grateful for the kindness of the second young master Yuan. He bowed again and agreed to be recruited. Bai Xiaowen's action seemed like he didn't give any face to the officials who surrendered, but in reality, it was a normal operation in the Three Kingdoms. As a leader, he had to follow the rules of the game. The Three Kingdoms emphasized loyalty and righteousness. No matter what, he had to do it on the surface. For example, Cao Cao had always tried to persuade captives who were slightly capable to surrender. If the other party insisted on not surrendering, Cao Cao would send him off with tears in his eyes and give him a proper burial. If the other party expressed that he wanted to collect the Lord's remains before surrendering, Cao Cao would definitely show admiration and let his subordinates learn this loyalty and righteousness. The Qin court relied on many traders to take over the Central Plains. Once their rule stabilized, they would write a book, Records of the Traders, to nail these traders to the pillar of shame. This was to prevent the Qin court officials from ever being a traitor to the Qin court. After Bai Xiaowen comforted the Xiangping officials, he asked them to return to their posts. Only Wang Lai was left. "Wang Lai, how much money and grain do we have in the Xiangping treasury?" Wang Lai stood up and bowed. "Governor, please report. Now that we have just restored order, the 4 prefectures of Liaodong have no leader. This is the best time to calm the people down." Provincial Governor Darren asked about Xiangping's grain and money as soon as he opened his mouth. Is this what the people of Liaodong's 4 counties are looking forward to? F***K, I've been educated. Bai Xiaowen cursed in his heart. "I'm just asking about money and grain. My family's Cecilia is waiting for rice in Beiping." In the time it took you to say so many words, you can answer me several times. However, for Wang Lai to say this, he was at least a knowledgeable person. Bai Xiaowen stood up and helped Wang Lai up. "It's my fault. We should have stabilized Liaodong first. In your opinion, what should we do?" Wang Lai stroked his beard and said, "Young master is the son of a great general and one of the 3 dukes of the Yuan family. The 4 prefectures of Liaodong have looked up to you for a long time. Young master, why don't you write a recruitment notice and send it to the various prefectures to recruit talents and win the support of the famous people of Liaodong? This way, the people and civilians of the 4 prefectures will definitely want to submit." Bai Xiaowen nodded. "Your words are good. In this era, what kind of people were the famous people? Basically, they were all scholars from famous families and aristocratic families. Winning the support of these people was the same as winning the support of the Liaodong aristocratic families. With the support of the aristocratic families, the people and civilians of the 4 prefectures would definitely submit. This was inevitable. Of course, Bai Xiaowen would also improve the plan proposed by Wang Lai and add some content. For example, the positions of the officials in the 4 prefectures of Liaodong would not change. Everyone would still take benefits as before. All in all, Bai Xiaowen wanted to show that he did not come to Liaodong to flip the table, but to take a share of the profits. Where would this share of profits come from? Of course, from the Gongsun family's bowl. The interests of the other families and races were not affected, but the Gongsun family had to eliminate the root of the problem to prevent them from reviving and causing trouble again with resentment. Bai Xiaowen was not in the mood to make drastic changes to Liaodong. Such a thankless task was not worth it. After all, the time he stayed in the Three Kingdoms plain was very short. He would not be able to wait until after the changes and the benefits under the new order. "Gongsun and his son, you may not believe me, but I came to Xiangping mainly to investigate the clues of the dragon pattern gold box and to get some money for my family's Cecilia," Bai Xiaowen thought to himself. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.